All right. So to open up the work session, we have John Chmil here from Lyons and Gaddis. He's going to be talking to us about metropolitan districts, the organization, and the purpose of such with a presentation. Mr. John.
Good evening, board. Thank you very much for taking the time today. Um, as stated, I'm here as special counsel for the town to talk a little bit about metropolitan districts. And really, this is intended primarily just as the introduction to kind of what is the metropolitan district, and then also more specifically what the organizational process looks like when you talk about a town that's actually considering the potential organization of a metropolitan district. You got some materials in your packet. I'm happy to answer questions as we go through, but also going to try to keep this fairly efficient and leave some time at the end for questions as well. Tried it first. There we go. All right. So just a brief introduction on the issues we want to cover tonight. So primarily the purpose, again, of what a metropolitan district is. One of the big differentiations is kind of its relationship to the development that is going on within the metropolitan district and kind of differentiating the metropolitan district itself from the development going on. Now we'll talk about the organizational process, bring up one of the primary terms in the statute, material modification, which is essentially what happens after organization and when they want to actually propose some kind of material change to their service plan, and then talk a little bit about some of the recent legislative changes related specifically to metropolitan districts and promoting transparency with regard to the information for the taxpayers within the district. So first, you'll hear Title 32 a lot when you're in the special district world. So that's the Special District Act. So that's the specific title within the Colorado Revised Statutes that deal with the creation and operation of special districts. Special districts can cover any number of governmental or public services. Some of those are listed up there: fire protection, water, sanitation, park and rec, and then of course why we're here tonight, metropolitan districts. You see kind of the difference there is most special districts are what you would call single purpose special districts. So they kind of are organized to provide one specific service: fire protection, domestic water service. The unique thing about metropolitan districts is that they're organized to provide any two or more of the special district services. So that's actually the list right out of the statute. Yes, we have specifically listed in there mosquito control, television relay. Maybe arguably a little bit outdated, but those are all of the public services that are available that you can organize a metropolitan district to provide. So that leads us in really to the primary purpose, right, of a metropolitan district, and that is to provide the specified services within their service plan. And really it covers two components. There's the long-term operation and maintenance of public infrastructure. So if you think about it very similar to the town, right? If you have town domestic water service, one of the primary purposes of that department within the town is to ensure you have clean, safe drinking water, but you also own and maintain all of the infrastructure, all the piping that's in the ground, the water treatment plant, et cetera. So a metropolitan district can do the same kind of thing and is charged with that long-term operation and maintenance of those pieces of infrastructure. Similarly, you have the ability to finance and potentially issue debt to pay for that infrastructure. So this would be something like a bond, for example, or a lease purchase financing that are specific to public entities that are providing, capital infrastructure projects. So a metropolitan district has that same access and can then leverage that public financing to then pay off these infrastructure projects. The other component is that this is actually establishing a separate local government, right? So just like the town has municipal boundaries, you have a metropolitan district or a fire protection district that has separate jurisdictional boundaries, and that's where they provide the service, and that's also where they would collect any revenue from. Primarily, they're property tax based, but also for limited purposes, you can actually have sales tax as well. So when you talk about the creation of a metropolitan district, you are creating that new taxing jurisdiction ultimately. They're governed by a 5 or 7 member board. That would be specified in the organizational process what the target would be, whether it's 5 or 7. Within Title 32, you can start at 5 and move up to 7, but you can't move back down. So that's kind of a critical determination on the front end. Either you kind of keep your option open, you start at 5, or you go in at 7. Usually that primarily relates to the size of a district. And as we touched on, mill levy and bonding authority. So mill levy being property taxes and the ability to issue bonds, both revenue, if it's fee-based, or a general obligation bond, which would be property tax based. We'll get into some of the details here in a bit. So when you're organizing a district, you actually have to define that service area, because ultimately what that does is that relates to the assessor's office in the county, and they actually create a new file. So if you go on the county's website and you see that list of all the property taxes you pay, that's kind of the overlay of all the separate jurisdictions that your property is within. So that Metropolitan District would create a new one of those layers where they would provide the service and impose that tax. And one of, again, the primary reasons that you have the proposal of an organization of a metropolitan district is that it does promote development in areas where there's a lack of infrastructure. That's really what they come in to provide, right? So it's this kind of odd combination, because it's not the metropolitan district itself that's actually developing the property, as it were. There's still a separate process. They would go through the same development process with the town as far as the entitlements, the actual structural building. But what you do is then you have the overlay of the Metropolitan District that can take on the long-term operations and maintenance of the infrastructure. So if they decide that they're going to provide a certain type of service, for example, if it's sanitation, then the developer can say, look, we're going to organize this Metropolitan District to provide sanitation services in an area that otherwise wouldn't get it. They can then develop that infrastructure and assign it to the Metropolitan District later for that ongoing operation and maintenance into the future. So again, that's kind of one of those big differentiations. Yes, they are related, and usually you're going to have the developer entity as the applicant for creating the Metropolitan District, but those are two separate, distinct processes. No problem. Secret agent man. So that is to say that if you're going to start talking about a metropolitan district, that's not going to change any of the town's rights as to the development process that would be separately considered. So that always kind of comes up when you start to consider these issues. Yes, they are related, but they're going to be separate and distinct processes with regard to how that development actually takes place. So to touch a little bit more about the bonding authority, because this ends up being one of the kind of key considerations as far as the service plan goes, is the debt authorization. So as part of the service plan, you actually have to state, here are the estimated costs for providing this infrastructure, and here's how we intend to pay for it. So part of that folds in to the expectation of the issuance typically of general obligation bonds. So those would be bonds that are guaranteed by a separate mill levy. So you can have the operational mill levy, usually somewhere between kind of 5 and 10 initially, and then you can have your debt mill levy. So very similarly, if the town wanted to issue a general obligation bond, you would actually go out for a separate election to issue that new tax purely to support that bond issuance. There's also revenue bonds, which primarily come into it when you actually have the fee-based service. This is most common in water and sanitation context when you have customers that are paying a fee, right? So you actually have the water bill or the sanitation bill that's paid on a monthly basis. That's not considered tax revenue. That's fee-based revenue. So there's a separate type of bond that you can issue based on that fee revenue. And those are what are called revenue bonds. But generally speaking, when we're talking about a service plan, what we're really talking about is that debt authorization for general obligation bonds, because that relates to the mill levy impact for the property owners within that service area. So then what really the service plan does is it defines the scope of services, the scope of the public improvements, the debt authorization, and those specific lists of services that they intend to provide. Again, one of those, the 2 or more that they intend to provide within that service area. So you'll see, we provided the one example service plan. We just grabbed one from the area as a sample. That was from Fort Collins, just to kind of show you how these kind of break down. And most of them follow a similar kind of pattern. There's some unique components on kind of some of the mill levy caps and things like that. But really what you can see is that it really is kind of a, these are the three services we were going to provide. We're going to assign this infrastructure to the town ultimately. So it really is the plan for how this district is actually going to operate. As far as the organizational process, we have initially the service plan submission to the town. So that is the first step in the process. If the service plan is actually approved by the town, then they have to go through a district court petition process. There's an additional hearing at the court level. If that's satisfactory, then they actually issue the order for the election for organizing the district. And then if the election is successful, then they come back to the court and actually get their court order of organization. So you all are really actually the first stop in the process, and really is where a lot of the detail gets worked out at the service plan level. So as we stated, Title 32 has kind of the detail on the process really laid out. And ultimately, usually, this is really a county process. So when you look at the statutes, the kind of primary statutes are all drafted with using the term county. But about 10 years ago or so, they started really creating this expectation. Well, if you're entirely within a municipality, really it's the town or the city that should control the process. So in this context, if the Metropolitan District would be wholly within the boundaries of the town of Wellington, then you all would be the single decision-making body on that initial service plan. And then we also have specific timelines that attach to this process. And there is a public hearing associated with that. So it's fairly similar to kind of a development application style process. They would, have an application submitted to the town planning department, and then it would come before you. And there's really kind of a fairly quick process as far as kind of how you can consider it. And really what ends up happening is that you have to set the public hearing relatively quickly after getting that application. It has to be set within 30 days after that first meeting after receipt. You can continue it once for another 30-day period. And after that, any further continuance has to be by agreement of the town and the applicant. Usually, again, there is some back and forth, right? Oftentimes that's kind of a review and comment period. And really what we're going to talk about a little bit later is kind of potentially the idea of setting those expectations, right? Is if the town wants to move forward, that oftentimes what's been kind of now become the common practice is that you actually have a policy, and as was provided in the Fort Collins example, is a model service plan that you kind of talked about some from the policy perspective. Here's kind of our general expectations. Here's the starting point. And it makes it a lot easier than right at a review point, because then you can say, here may be some of the minor changes that we already know, are part of our model service plan, or here it is kind of as presented based on the model. So that can kind of make it fairly efficient if you have that kind of model service plan and policy in place ahead of time versus kind of reinventing the wheel, right? And getting from the first side and not knowing kind of any of the issues from a policy standpoint of how the board feels about it. So as far as content goes, this is all kind of really straight out of the statute. So again, very much like a development review process. And you kind of, check the boxes, right? So you do have to have a specific description of the proposed services, financial plan, and a preliminary engineering or architectural survey. And so those two pieces there really give you the detail, right? That kind of inform some of the later considerations like debt authorization and mill levy. Because if you know what services they're intending to provide and you know how much they're estimating the cost at, that's really where that consideration comes in. Okay, well, what really is a reasonable debt authorization? What's kind of a reasonable outlook as far as any timelines? Oftentimes, within that process, you can actually get some refinement as well, right? Because that's kind of the unique nature of any development, right? They have a certain idea they come in with. You can be working through the process and they're still working out their numbers. And you certainly have, examples where as part of that process, they say, hey, actually, we're going to take this out, put this back in. So it can be a little bit of a back and forth process as the development moves forward. So it's not to say that it is hard and fast, set in stone based on the first draft that's submitted. But certainly what you want is that kind of reasonable basis. And oftentimes they rely on consultants this is going to be something that will be very clear as far as a 30 or 40-year timeline. And what they end up doing is they try to project what the growth and assessed value will be over that time. And so then they can kind of actually tell you, look, here's what we feel is a reasonable amount, of funding that this district could create. So you're really actually looking at that and trying to determine, well, this seems reasonable. It doesn't. We feel like we need to put some more limits in. And that's really kind of the meat of that consideration there. Of course, include a map. So that will be a specific, defined area. And then you'll know the biggest difference here, I would say, is the single district versus multi-district approach. So sometimes you'll just have one single metropolitan district that's organized, so you just have one jurisdictional entity that'll ultimately be governed by a single board. If you have a multi-phase development, oftentimes what they'll use now is a multiple district organization. So you'll have typically what's called the control district, and then you'll have numbered districts. So each one will be defined with its own separate map. And so that will usually coincide with how they want to phase the development, right? So for example, district number 1 would be phase 1, district number 2 is phase 2. And that allows them to break up that public infrastructure that might be unique to those specific portions of each phase of development. But you'll get all of that in a detailed mapping, and you'll see that overlay, how many acres, what are the proposed uses. So if it's commercial or multifamily, for example, you'll get all of that detail in that proposal. They also have to provide the general description of any facilities that they want to construct. So, oftentimes now a lot of the focus in metropolitan districts ends up being park and rec and stormwater. So you'll have those specific facilities mapped out. Oftentimes when you're in a town, if you have domestic water and sanitation, they'll put in the infrastructure, but then they're actually assigning that to the town for the future maintenance. So they're not actually going to get into the business of competing with the town and those services. They'll put in the infrastructure and assign that over to the town, but they may take on the parks, the stormwater, for example. So they'll have to describe what the kind of proposed facilities are, if it's going to be 2 parks, what kind of infrastructure is going to be put in, kind of what their plan is as far as the cost of those, both install and ongoing maintenance. They also have to set out if there's going to be any proposed agreements for services. Most commonly, again, we talked about the town. If you're going to be the domestic water or sanitary sewer, or sometimes trash provider, or oftentimes a lot of my clients are also fire protection districts. So you have the existing fire protection district overlaid, and the metropolitan district isn't going to come in and say, we're going to actually provide our own fire service. So they'll say, look, it's going to be the local fire district. And you can specify a specific agreement that you might have with them as far as the fire service infrastructure that might be installed. Then it gets into some of the kind of baseline criteria for statutory review. We'll talk about in the next slide. And 2 pieces that were very recently added to the statute are on the bottom there, which is the maximum mill levy for the general obligation debt, and then the maximum debt authorization. So those hadn't been specifically required before, but they had been kind of by policy and practice put in, but now they're actually in the statute as well. So you, again, will actually see in that proposal what that maximum mill levy proposal would be. Under the statute, to kind of get outside of having to rely solely on the growth and assessed value, usually they have to cap that at 50 mills. So that's really what you ultimately see. And that's kind of the consideration within the service plan itself of what that total mill levy cap might be. They'll ask for about 50 in debt, and usually between 5 and 10 for operations and maintenance. And so the question is, well, are we going to put a hard cap, at 50 total? And they have to break it up, and that influences the way they have to model their proposed financing. Similarly, debt authorization would be the maximum cap that they could issue. So, if they think that their infrastructure is going to run $40 million, we look at that. If that's a reasonable estimate, then the debt authorization would cap that specifically at $40 million on the debt issuance. You can kind of talk about, there will be some pieces about the cost of issuance and things like that. So usually they try to, negotiate some degree of wiggle room because oftentimes you're not issuing that debt until, 8, 9, 10 years after your, approval of the service plan. So there's certainly some nuance there, but it will be a hard and fast number right, that will be in that service plan that the town ultimately, if it's approved, would be agreeing to, and they'd be held to that standard moving forward. So here are the primary four components of the statutory review criteria. And the statute actually says that the town shall disapprove the application unless satisfactory evidence of these four are actually shown at the public hearing. So again, sufficient existing and projected need for service. So really, again, that focus on the service delivery, right? We're going to provide these three services and we're going to be held to that. And also they have to make that statement that it's actually needed, right? We're not coming in and overlapping an existing service provider. There's actually a need that we're filling here by creating this district. Related to that, that the existing service is inadequate for the present projected needs. So this is usually where the development comes in, right? They're saying, you know, right now there's not any existing services. And if it's developed, you know, there's no one else is actually going to be able to provide these services, which justifies the creation of this separate local government entity. The fact that the proposed district is capable of providing those services. So again, this ties down to, okay, now you have to specify what services you're going to provide, what the relationship is between the district's direct service provision and the town maybe taking over, for example, water and sanitation or things like that. And then the area to be included has or will have that financial ability to discharge the debt. So again, you're really making sure that you're making that clear finding. There's an existing need for services. The district can provide them, and basically that they can reasonably pay for them based on that economic projection of growth and assessed value over that period of time. So really ideally, right, once you have that initial application, you have some town feedback, you might have a little bit of negotiation on some of the clarifications in the service plan. Once you get to this decision phase, hopefully, you know, these are kind of pretty clear, right? That we actually have come to an agreement on the plan that looks reasonable, that hits the factors. But ultimately, this is really what the town board will be charged with, is making that determination under the statute. And this decision does require a public hearing. And so you will have, you know, the opportunity for anyone, any member of the public that's interested to come and provide their testimony as part of your consideration. And after that public hearing, you can either approve it, deny it, or issue a conditional approval. So sometimes, again, you'll get really close, but there might be one or two sticking issues. You hear that public hearing feedback and you actually want to say, look, we think that we're close, but there's some additional information we might need. Maybe it's about projected assessed value, some clarifications, or clarifications on the necessity of a certain service delivery that they've proposed. So you can actually issue that conditional approval subject to them coming back and actually providing that satisfactory evidence. Ultimately, this is a written determination by the town, so it would be a resolution ultimately that comes before you with those findings. And typically the way that happens is that you'd have the public hearing, you make that initial determination, and then the resolution would be prepared based on that ultimate finding, and you would sign off on that. And that's really what then they can take to the court as the approval from the town to move forward in the next steps of the organizational process. So following approval, if the service plan application is approved, they, as we said in the beginning, they have to go and file a petition for organization in the district court. So that triggers its own kind of court process. There will be a published notice and a court hearing on that organizational process. And then ultimately, if the court finds the petition is sufficient, they are the ones that order the actual election that occurs within the boundaries. That organizational election is held within the stated boundaries of the proposed district, and only the eligible electors that exist at the time of organization will vote on that. So Title 32 defines specifically as an eligible elector as you have to be registered to vote in the state of Colorado and either own property in your individual capacity within the district or reside within the district. So ultimately, kind of the reality of that is if there's no development in the area, there's typically fairly limited eligible electors at the time of organization. So something that's certainly part of the public debate right now on metropolitan districts is kind of that last step of the organizational process and that election component. So certainly something we always want to highlight as to kind of the reality, because it does, you hear there is an election, but ultimately it's fairly limited as to who can actually vote in that initial organizational election. So moving on, if you go through that full process, and so you're approved, you're organized after that election, there's a specific process within Title 32 on what has to occur if there's what's deemed a quote unquote material modification. And that really means any kind of material change to the service plan. So again, the service plan almost functions as kind of the constitution, if you will, of the metropolitan district. So if they have to change anything material in their service plan down the road, say the development trajectory changes, economic downturn, kind of any list of reasons that they might change TAC, they have to come back to the town and basically follow the same exact process as the initial approval and propose that material modification. We'd follow the same public hearing process at the town level. And then you all ultimately would have the authority whether to approve that material modification or not. Most often, what you see when you see this happen is around the debt authorization. That's usually, it's taken longer than they anticipated to start development, or there was a stall in development. They don't have the assessed value yet to issue bonds. So they say, hey, we need a little bit more time, or maybe we need, costs have gone up. Kind of a lot of this happened after the pandemic, right? So you organized in 2018, you had your cost projections, and then the whole construction industry changed. Everything got exceedingly more expensive, and now those estimates aren't even really accurate, right, as to how much that infrastructure will be. So that triggered a lot of these processes. And so you can see it's not necessarily that, they're doing anything really substantively different, but they are held to that standard that, hey, you're limited to the 40 million we said. Well, now it's going to be 65 million to put in the infrastructure, and they have to come back to the town to ask for that change in the service plan. Similar, that last bullet point is a good one to highlight as well, is that you can actually, as part of the service plan process, you can add specific triggers to that either would be absolutely considered a material modification, because the statute doesn't give you a clear definition. But you can actually say in the service plan, we think, if you basically want to do any of these 5 things, you have to come back and go through the material modification process. Similarly, you can just add in triggers that require town approval. One example from the Fort Collins model service plan is any use of eminent domain. So a metropolitan district does have the authority of eminent domain or condemnation, but right in the service plan, it says if you intend to, you actually have to come to the town first and have that process and get the town's authorization, and then you can go on the eminent domain path. So you can actually build some of those in that basically is an additional kind of check and balance to ensure that the town is aware as to any of those kind of major decisions that are taking place at the Metro District level. And then lastly, these kind of primary, because it comes up a fair amount, right? The transparency elements of metropolitan districts. And it's ultimately because, right, you do have primarily the property tax impact to residents. And this process, right, this organizational process happens at the very beginning when there are no tax-paying residents, or there are no developed, right, residential units where taxpayers are living. So the legislature has taken notice, and in the last about 4 or 5 years have passed a couple specific requirements for increasing transparency for metropolitan districts. One of those we mentioned was just added for any metropolitan districts organized after January of 2024, which is that maximum mill levy information directly within the service plan. They're also required specifically to email all of their residents for any call for nominations. So once you actually have residents for any board election, you actually have to email, as well as the other kind of published notice requirements. There's a specific now real estate transaction disclosure that actually provides, it's not necessarily always specific to the district itself, but it actually shows you the calculations for what a mill levy would be on your assessed value. So it gives you an idea of kind of what that potential impact would be. As we said, a lot of these, the debt mill levy, pushes anywhere between, 30 to 50 mills. which is a big impact, right? If you already have maybe 100 or 120 mills on your property and you have that additional 40 or 50, that's certainly going to be something that's very noticed, in your annual tax bill. So they do have that at the transactional stage. And they also are specifically required to have a website, and they have to post certain information throughout the year and ensure that it's all up to date as far as the budgets, financial planning, board meeting information. And finally, there is an annual report requirement to the town that has specific information, basically any of the major things that have occurred that year. And that has to be provided to the town unless the town decides to waive that requirement. So overall, we just wanted to highlight those as far as kind of some of the expectations going into it, that, there have been some added safeguards, put in to try to address some of the transparency considerations for metropolitan districts and give some of that information as much as possible up front. But also with that annual report that the town, it's not like, all right, it's approved and you kind of never hear about it again. Ultimately, unless you waive that requirement, you will get those regular updates on an annual basis. So you will kind of be able to keep tabs on how development is progressing and things like that. So that's all I had prepared specifically for this evening. Happy to answer any questions or highlight anything in that model service plan. But like I said, ultimately wanted to just provide that introduction, and certainly happy to, follow up at a future meeting if you have, additional questions.
I have one. I have a question. So you mentioned that within the Metro District, there's the opportunity to cover 2 or more services. So with that, are those only within the district, or they can be anywhere throughout the town? Like you can require an affordability trust, which obviously affects the entire town. So I'm just curious about that.
So those specific services would just be those Title 32 specific services within the service plan, and that's primarily geared towards within the defined service area. Technically, they do have the statutory ability to provide extraterritorial service. That could be something that was, that is addressed specifically in the service plan as to what that expectation is. For example, that could be a trigger, if you are considering extraterritorial service, you have to come back to the town and gain approval. As far as kind of going into it, a plan for providing extraterritorial service, I think that would just come down to what that service might be and kind of what the requirements would be on it. It sounds like the affordability piece potentially is more of a town-wide expectation and policy that then is implicated into the service plan. So the Metropolitan District would have to follow it, but it wouldn't necessarily be the Metropolitan District providing that service outside. So I guess that would be kind of the nuance there.
Right. So the Metro District would funnel or potentially X amount of dollars in lieu of X amount of units of affordable housing into said, imaginary affordable housing trust. The same could be said with other public service, like buildings, or, you could write that in, correct? Like if it were to benefit the entire town?
Well, they're technically limited as far as really that there's always a time between the tax revenue, and you really want the tax revenue of that jurisdiction to be primarily benefiting those that are paying the tax. So that would be kind of the trick as far as making sure that really you're focusing from the Metro District standpoint, that it's really serving the population that would be within the Metropolitan District. I think some of maybe what you're also kind of considering would potentially be more in the development process and some of the entitlements with a developer. So kind of, again, like dual track, there's some components that would be more the negotiation with the developer and how they're developing the actual lots versus the Metropolitan District, which is really focused fairly specifically on those kind of long-term public infrastructure kind of service-oriented components. So that may be kind of the distinction there as well.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Okay, my question is, can you give us an idea what type of impact that's going to be on the real estate tax for like a $500,000 home within the Metro District typically?
I not off the top of my head. I didn't.
Okay. I have heard, up to $600 a month it could cost, but I heard been a lot better controlled since that particular metro district went in. So
Yeah.
do you have, I mean, just rough idea?
So you'd have to do some quick math on a rough assessed value of $1 million house, which would be now I think 6.7, 6.25 of that value times the 50 mils.
You're the math genius. What's the price?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just
But-
did it for my house
Right.
and it's $78 a month for 55 mils.
That's it. Okay.
So that
My house isn't $500,000.
It isn't?
No, it's
Okay.
about 350,000.
so that usually, as far as the impact, the addition, it's
Mhm.
usually somewhere in the realm of between 40 and 50 additional mills on top of what the existing jurisdiction. So usually you think of, town, school district, fire district.
Mhm.
You have those later on, and you could have someone basically, the classic example is if it's, 100 mills across the street, just by living in the Metropolitan
Mhm.
District, it might be 150 mills. So that's the distinction. That is ultimately the difference,
Mhm.
in what you're seeing as far as impact. Again, it is ultimately tied to the services, within that. So that's tied specifically to the public infrastructure that was put in to that district. That, again, depending on size, sometimes they build in, certain, substantive recreational facilities, things like that. So there's usually also kind of that, tied into like the value, if you will.
Mhm.
But yes, at a baseline, usually somewhere between 40 and 50 mils, or at least a period of time when you have debt issued, is the additional
Right.
impact.
Just to put this in perspective, I know I'm probably spending $1,400 a year for
Mhm.
my extra water during the watering season. So that'd be about $120 a month. All right, close to that. Okay. So that right there, I mean, the only thing that the Metro District, they do not get any water bills except for what the city provides for the inside water, correct? And
Mhm.
okay, I think that's kind of what they're planning on here. So, I mean, just need to keep that in perspective. We pay for water our way through the city metro district, I guess is kind of what you'd do the comparison of. And they're getting a break over there because of the non-pot water. Suppose, okay, that's part of it. And from what I understand, this, I'm just trying to really realize this too, is, they get a break, a little bit of break on what the price of the home's going to be sold for because they're in a metro district. I think that's what some of the builders had relayed to us. So most theoretically, okay,
We lower the cost of the development, which lowered the cost
Right.
of the total home at the end.
right. I know there's one HOA here in town that is a non-pot, and they don't collect hardly any extra money for problems that they have. They had a big well problem, and I guess they have one heck of a thing, trying to get that resolved. And I know what HOAs can do is assess. The assessments is not covered by insurance. So, I mean, it has to come out of pocket. And I don't think the assessment is tax deductible either, correct? I know
don't-
you're probably not a tax lawyer, but
Yeah,
I would
I
not
am
think
not.
that's a deductible expense on your income tax. So, again, these are all the different things we need to consider when we're looking at a metro district. They do have some benefits, even though, it is going to cost extra.
Mhm.
But, our water costs extra on our monthly bill, just like they're going to be probably paying it through the metro district. So again, like I said, when you're looking at this, just got to keep everything in perspective.
Saying fees of the metro district.
Right.
Additional costs, kind of
The-
like.
the mill levy. Right. It's going to be kind of like an HOA, but it's going to be tax deductible at that point. Right. And, one way or the other, water isn't free, especially not in Colorado. somebody's going to be paying for it. And I think that's kind of the way that the Metro District, at least this one here, possibly could be. I know Mr. Cannon disagrees, and I'd love to hear his response too on this. So thank you. But
You need to go right now.
I do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the beauty of the Metro District and talking about it through the work session, and if we continue to have other planning sessions around it, the service agreement is something that the board has control to really develop and structure the way that we want to. And that means we can incentivize affordable housing if we want to. We can include services or not. We can, develop other things. And we can also put in place reporting requirements and requirements for boards to be resident-led or majority after a certain period of time, put in place, the caps for the mill levies and all kinds of things. So we really have the opportunity here to use this for the benefit of the town, and then also to restrict it as much as we feel we need to. So just want to put that out there for everybody. It doesn't have to be one certain way. We have that ability to structure it how we want to.
Sure. Mr. Chmil, if you don't mind, you talked about the formation of the board, once the Metro District is in place and after the service plan is approved. And you also made a statement about the time difference between establishing the service plan and creating the Metro District versus when they issue the debt. And I think you characterized that it could be 7 to 9 years or somewhere in there, because it takes time to do that. What is the composition of the board when it's initially presented, and at what point typically does that composition of the board change to the residents within that district as opposed to, maybe just the people who actually own the property? Can you
Yeah,
fill us in
absolutely.
on that?
I'll start with the classic lawyer answer. It depends. Because really you'd have to, each one of, the districts as proposed, typically the major difference will be single district versus multiple district. In a single district, really it's, it'll progress until there's a certain number of residents. And then similar to any other public board, it's just kind of willing parties, right? that will say, hey, yes, I want to be on the board. So there's not necessarily a way to specifically time that, as far as the expectation goes. But in a single district model, there's only a single board, right? You have to be an owner or a resident. And so as development occurs and lots or homes are sold and folks move in, that's the point at which they at least have access to the board. It can be a little different as far as expectation goes with a multi-district model. And I say that because typically you do have this idea of a control district that's usually, maybe an acre parcel. And there's ultimately agreements, IGAs, with all of the numbered districts, which are actually where the residential development is going to occur. So in each residential development, the same is true as a single district model. As residential lots are built up, folks move in, they would have access to that board. Ultimately, though, the control district is usually maintained by the developer because they're the ones actually maintaining the infrastructure projects as each phase develops. So the control district likely will not change unless there's some expectation that once development is fully complete, they actually dissolve that, control district, and then it's just the number of districts. So that's kind of the nuance with that multi-district model, because there is kind of a need for the developer to maintain some control as the phases of development progress and tie that in. But ultimately, really, it comes down to as the residential development moves forward, they'll ultimately, any resident that moves in, essentially immediately has access the next time an election comes along. Absolutely.
I assume it would be a very small election initially, but who pays for that election?
The district would.
Okay.
It's a cost of the organization.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Something I've been concerned about, it didn't come up necessarily, is $78 a month doesn't seem significant, but my worry is that a HOA fee would be added on top of that, and that would add significance, and then adding to the 78, the liability for the homeowner. So I know services can be included. Is there any protections against excessive HOA fees in addition to any
So-
property?
Yeah, I mean, you could certainly build in kind of reasonableness standards for really any service fees,
Okay.
that the Metropolitan District is going to provide. And I think specifically with the HOA side, there is the opportunity within the statute for the Metropolitan District to also kind of serve as the HOA and to actually do direct covenant enforcement.
Okay.
They have to squarely put that into the service plan as well. So that would be kind of an additional consideration.
Yeah.
And kind of a specific piece of how they're going to operate that. And there's some very clear expectations on what they can do and how they have to set their fees and public notice requirements.
Okay.
So there's already kind of a little bit of process to that. If you're actually talking about the, HOA, if it's a separate HOA, it's a little harder, because ultimately that's going to be now another entity,
Billing a fee.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
That would have its kind of own control and board.
Yeah.
But certainly from the Metropolitan District standpoint, you could provide clear expectations on reasonableness of fees, or, again, build in those triggers of if there's, any fee increase over a certain amount, you have to notify the town, something along those lines.
Okay. So snow, trash, those kind of things that might be included in any other HOA could be required services of kind of our template.
Yeah, I mean, it could certainly be, as far as the expectation goes, it's always ends up kind of the size of the district or the development, whether they think they can support that or not. And that would really come through in the application. So
Right.
you can, just because I guess maybe to think of it the other way, the model service plan kind of is, the starting point. But then typically the developer applicant would come in and say, we're actually only looking to do these two.
Okay.
And so they'd remove them, from the service plan. And so then the consideration as well, maybe then for the town, well, how are these other services that we're kind of considering going to be handled? And they may just say, look, there's going to be an independent
Yeah.
HOA.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's kind of again, it kind of depends on the trajectory and what that specific development looks like.
Okay. So there's no controls. They could potentially do a separate HOA. Okay.
Yeah, they could.
That is concerning to me, to be honest. I just have a couple more questions. And then for what if the services and facilities improvements just don't happen? What is the recourse for that?
So you could certainly build in kind of like the FAR look as kind of like what happens if it completely stalls out. Now there are a couple different ways that can happen. If they kind of just completely go away, now there's actually a couple administrative ways that district can just be dissolved.
Okay.
If it's just like radio silence, that can be handled relatively efficiently, either from a town application or technically even DOLA, the oversight agency for local governments, has the authority to just say, you haven't filed a budget in 3 years. You're not really doing anything. So there's the kind of that extreme,
Okay.
Example. If it's more of kind of like economic impacts, oftentimes it's really just about that kind of check-in or that annual reporting requirement.
Yeah.
Give us the reason
Right.
why, nothing's happening out there. Usually at that point, once it gets, maybe 7, 8, 9, 10 years, if it's still just a dirt lot, it's oftentimes when you start to hear public, coming in and saying what's going on out there. They have these grand plans. So that certainly would be part of the annual reporting expectation as to kind of what the trajectory is for development. And if you really see, I mean, we've seen some certainly that straddled the kind of 2007-8 financial crisis, where the developer entities essentially went away. Then a new developer came in and kind of had to stand in the place, and they asked for service plan amendments, which is essentially very similar to the organizational process or material modification process.
Okay.
So then you'd have some new person come in and say, hey, here's our plan now.
Right.
Now we need a little bit more debt authorization or a little bit more time. So again, tough to kind of say, a one size fits all.
Right.
But certainly if there's a substantial lag, that would be something the town would have the ability to actually ask for backup on. And what's really, what's the impact and, what's the reasoning behind that?
Taxes are generally included in a debt to income ratio, which determines qualifications for home loans. Does this additional property tax also weigh in on that for debt to income?
I wouldn't say specifically. I mean, again, I'm not a lender counsel
Mhm.
either, but That would just really probably be more on the individual purchasing it consideration as far as the impact on their monthly expenses,
Okay.
you know, and what that additional, you know, across the street, you know, your total property taxes is 2,000, in the Metro District, it's going to be 2,500.
Yeah.
And how that impacts, you know, your ultimate mortgage payment. But that would be kind of, I think, the extent of that. I don't know that a lender would necessarily specifically go in and say, you know, this is going to really impact it. It should be just kind of part of what your total payment is.
Okay. I'm just curious if like
Yeah.
the additional cost would eliminate some home buyers based on debt to income, but it is a home cost. So I guess it would make sense if that were the case. I think that's all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chmil. Really appreciate the presentation tonight. It's been very informative. I just want to get something out there in front of our residents and any residents in the audience, as well as folks that might want to be listening. The town is in no way considering any type of metro district for anything that's already been established, right? What this is regarding is a new metro district, potentially for a new development that might be coming to town. So these would be new houses being built. And I think it's important to note that what we'd be talking about, I think, under the current arrangement is the ability to offer amenities that don't already or that could not otherwise be afforded by said development if that was to occur. So, for example, we're talking about pickleball courts, parks, these types of things within that metro district. And I think it's also important to point out that any amenities that happen to exist within a metro district are also open to the public. So I just want to get that out in front of everybody so that they're aware of that. The one question that I did have, though, regarding this was specifically the 6.25% Colorado assessment off your total taxable value of your home or whatever that may be. If debt was to be issued under say Metro District was to be approved and the mill levy rate was set and debt was to be issued, if the state of Colorado was to change that 6.25% assessment value, what happens to the debt that's already been issued?
Very good question. And that's actually a specific provision that's actually been in service plans back to, I think, even like the 80s and 90s, that essentially, you may recall a lot of the debate around the quote unquote Gallagher Amendment, which was the state process before that got repealed of how those assessment rates were set. And within each service plan, they had an ability to adjust their mill levy based on changes in the assessment rate. Now that's kind of become known as a de-Gallagher clause or a de-Gallagher amendment. Now that it's repealed, it's kind of changed the expectation a little bit because now it's just a matter of legislative debate. And so as we've seen the last 3 years, you know, each legislative session, you know, they're going in and tinkering with what not only the residential rate, but also non-residential rates. But there is a protection there within the service plan typically, but also because a general obligation bond is guaranteed by that specific mill levy, the ballot measure itself says basically we can adjust it to ensure that we can make the debt payment. So there's some legal protections there if there are adjustments that happen later on and assessed value to ensure that you can at minimum, you know, adjust that mill levy to make that debt payment.
So maybe just a follow-up question there. If there was to be a maximum mill levy amount that had been set for the Metro District and say the state of Colorado was to lower the assessment value from 6.25% to, I don't know, 4.25% or something like that, then theoretically the mill levy rate could then actually be set higher than what the maximum's already been set to. Would that be accurate?
Yes.
Okay.
That is accurate.
Just wanted to get
And that would be, that would be spelled out in the service plan. And it's pretty standard language now that it would say like, you know, here's the maximum debt mill levy. 50 subject to any adjustments based on changes in the assessed value for residential or commercial property, something along those lines. So you would technically have the ability, if you do have a ratcheting down of the residential assessment rate, for example, to actually go above, you know, you could assess 52 mills as long as you're tying that to the required principal and interest debt payment of that general obligation bond.
Understood. And maybe just one final question on that. It sounds like that would be automatic then, and the district would not have to come back to the board as far as a service plan amendment. That would just be something that would be built into the service plan already.
Yes,
Okay.
that is correct.
Understood.
And then that would certainly be something that would then come up in the annual report to say, hey, we actually had to assess, 52 based on this requirement and this change in the assessed value, and provide that context. So that certainly would be something that, the town would be aware of, at least in the near term.
Sure.
And it's certainly something, as, especially now the legislative changes and it almost changes on an annual basis at this point. That's just become a little bit more kind of a higher degree of public awareness, whereas I think it wasn't, before that. But even we have fire protection districts or water districts that have the same issue. If you have that debt authorization and you said, we'd only need 20 mils necessarily up front, you always have that savings clause to ensure that, okay, if we need 22 mils and to ensure we can pay the debt, because ultimately the default, again, impact is much worse than that adjustment to the mill levy is really the, making sure that you can meet that obligation.
Understood. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
You're so kind tonight. So if there was a decrease in the assessment value and an increase in the necessary mills, could that be written in as a trigger to come back to the board, or is it absolutely automatic?
The default language is automatic. I think what you run into there is the practical consideration, because ultimately you'd be doing it basically within the budget cycle. You'd be coming up basically between, August and December of that year, setting the mill levy, the need to act fairly quickly, because you'd have to certify that mill levy by the December 15th deadline. So I think that would probably be the only, you'd want to really think about kind of the practical implication and when they would have to come do that and how quickly maybe the town would have to. So I think it'd have to be a pretty specific process, as I think all I would say there, just because you do have that finite December 15th deadline to be able to certify the mill levy on time.
Sure. Okay. And then, sorry, one other question. Well, I guess maybe two. It's possible to set as a trigger, like interest limits and bond controls, to keep like the cost for residents more consistent and predictable, right? So also, couldn't you set the HOA restrictions, or, that could be in a templated service plan, right? That is created by us, and then sort of like a developer going to the Board of Adjustments, right? They would come to us and ask, could we eliminate this, right? I just want to like clarify that Metro District doesn't necessarily equal HOA.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. I think that certainly you have much more leeway to put some parameters on it if the intent is that the Metro District will act essentially as the HOA and engage in covenant enforcement. If it's not going to, you don't have quite as much that you could put on restriction, but you could at least set expectations. And again, that might be more of the conversation on the development and title process than the Metro District process.
I believe that was the inclusion that the Metro District would act as the HOA.
Yeah.
Okay.
For sure.
Yep.
So if somebody didn't want to, they would have to come and ask.
Sure.
I do have one more question, if you don't mind. Like, since you're being lenient tonight. If you could, Mr. Chmil, the initial investment that's made by the developer, because it's going to take so long before they can start building houses, but issue the bonds. So the developer essentially makes a loan to the Metro District. It's called a construction loan. Okay. And that loan is paid back, both the principal and even interest on that loan, which could be anywhere from 8 to 12%. That's paid back through the mill levy that's also assessed on those properties. Is that paid back before the debt service on the bonds is issued, or is it paid back at the same time, or can it be up front, or, because, over a 20 to, I think you even mentioned up to 40 years for a bond, that could turn into a tremendous amount of interest payments due back to the developer. So can you kind of delve on that just a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So certainly the expectation is that it's the developer is still having to front the cost to initiate development, right? But the kind of usefulness, if you will, of the Metropolitan District is that they structure it so that it's an advance, right? So the public infrastructure costs are actually an advance from the Metropolitan District. So there is typically a note issued for the benefit of the developer that has a fixed interest component. Usually the goal is that those notes are paid off as debt is issued. So once you get to a certain amount of assessed value, you issue, sometimes it's phased again. It might be the first is maybe 15 million when you have a lower assessed value and you pay off some of those initial notes. So it can kind of build on itself, but usually that is the intent, is that once you get a certain amount of assessed value that will support a bond issuance, those notes are the first things to kind of come off the books. And then it's just the bond obligation that you have moving forward. Depending on the length of development and the speed of development to some degree, sometimes they still will assess the debt mill levy and at least pay like interest payments on those notes on the front end to kind of control that cost. But it really just depends on, how much assessed value there is. Oftentimes the first few years, it's fairly negligible, right? So until you really get substantive assessed value growth, that's really when you see that, trying to, address that debt component. But really it's not until you can get a bond issuance that you can actually clear those notes. So that certainly can be part of the service plan expectations as well, as far as like initial terms of those developer notes. And again, if something's going to go beyond, say, 20 years, you have to come back to the town, kind of again, because usually that's correlated to the speed of development. Is it stalled for some reason? Why aren't we getting that assessed value growth and getting to that point where you are retiring that initial note debt?
Okay. And just from clarification, Dave, you looked at me and said Ed disagrees. Well, I think what was proposed to us by the developer would, the water delivery be still in the town. They're going to put the infrastructure in. The town bills potable water, but the Metro District would have their maintenance mill levy to maintain the non-potable irrigation system there.
Mm-hmm.
And you also mentioned one other thing that got me thinking. There is another Metro District here in Wellington. There is. And it was formed 12, 13 years ago. Nothing's been done. The developer's gone. It's north of town.
Okay.
Can we contact Dolan and say administratively kill this service plan?
I mean, yeah, we'd have to look at kind of the history
Yeah.
of it. I mean, if they haven't done any of the administrative upkeep,
Nothing.
then that may actually trigger, the ability to do that. So would be an interesting question to actually look at what the filings are. I know DOLA has been fairly backed up recently, so they're not necessarily actively monitoring that. Oftentimes you have to contact them, but now that the town has an independent ability to make that review as well. So that's certainly something to look into. And I'd, suggest working with your town attorney on that as far as, what the history is on that specific district.
Thank you. For years, we thought there's nothing we could do about it.
Right.
Appreciate that.
That's certainly, that could be an interesting process to go through as well.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you all for your time. And yeah, certainly happy to work with you all on any additional questions you have. Thanks for the opportunity.
So, Mr. Mayor, thank you, Mr. Chmil, for your time tonight. How would you like us to proceed? Are you interested in us looking at creating a template for a Metro District Service Plan? The one that was given to you in your packet was the City of Fort Collins. But it had a lot of the, I call them guardrails, but like prohibitive improvements, limitations, things like that identified in there that I felt like the town would want to build off of. And you all have mentioned a couple different limitations you might like to see in a Metro District Service Plan. I'm happy to work with Mr. Chmil to come up with a draft for review by the Board of Trustees at a later date, if that is something you're interested in. If not, we can just walk away and.
Sorry.
If I can comment on that briefly too. Sorry. Maybe there's a deeper conversation we need to have before we start investing money in legal fees and staff time about, whether or not we feel Wellington needs a Metro District, and, I just don't,
That's fair.
I just don't want to spend a lot of money,
Yeah.
on legal fees if that's something that may not come.
Yeah, that's fair.
I was just gonna say, Erie, Berthoud, and Windsor all have pretty good ones that are successful and are, I mean, not Windsor necessarily, but similar size to us. And they have some of the certain things that we've talked about tonight. So be interested in seeing if we go that route, something developed kind of as a hybrid between those.
And then also, what is it, Hudson, that Bassler Homes is already working within?
Yes, we have looked at that one as well.
Perfect. Yeah. The only statement I have is that we constantly mention that we want to be friendly to, certain kind of growth options that may assist the town economically. So I just want to keep that in mind too when we're looking at these funding mechanisms that are, does have the opportunity to progress those goals, those strategic goals, and if so, we should definitely consider them. So I'm all about proceeding with more education, more samples before spending money. But I definitely want us to continue pursuing it.
Yeah, I think overall board direction is pursue some sort of looking into template,
Okay.
looking at other municipalities and moving forward with that direction.
Okay, I can start working on that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, let's take a quick 5-minute and then we'll jump into having a meeting. I now call to order the March 24th meeting Board of Trustees, time being 6:41 p.m. Please rise for Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance. Ms. Clerk, can I get a roll call, please?
Trustee Wiegand,
Here.
Trustee Cannon,
Here.
Trustee Daly,
Present.
Trustee Moyer,
Here.
Trustee Teets, Mayor Pro Tem Mason,
Here.
Mayor Shosse.
Here.
Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Are there any amendments to the agenda this evening? Any conflicts of interest? No. All right, so now is going to be time for public comment. Members of the public wishing to speak on non-agenda items, approach the podium, state your name for the record, and sign in afterwards. You'll be given 3 minutes. This is for non-agenda items.
We'll start time week till I go up. Mayor, here's some stuff just for everybody.
Okay.
And there's some extra copies I gave Patty also to give the clerk in case people want them. Yep. So. Everybody, my name is Darren Roberson, Sage Homes, and also developer in Wellington. I'll try to speak clearly and slowly, but that's why I wrote it down in case there's questions later. The town of Wellington on February 24th adopted new impact fees on water and sewer taps to go into effect on April 1st. No, this is not an April Fool's joke. The town of Wellington did not reach out to the development or building community for any comments on the new rates being proposed. From the recommendations given from the water and wastewater impact fee memo, there is a range suggested along with the maximum legally supported. The town of Wellington elected to go with the maximum allowed with the new rate changes. Below is a timeline for when Saddleback was first approved with the changes to fees over the past 8 years. Saddleback's plat was approved April 10th, 2018. Back then, permits were $43,852. We understand water was an issue and had to change due to the large increase in costs that no one could have foreseen. With the new rate increases, this did not make sense to develop with large lots. To make it more affordable, we replatted Saddleback to smaller lots to make it more affordable. A lot of discussions and studies were done on conserving water and making all front yards to be xeriscape to conserve on water. The town agreed to reduce the exterior water requirements from 0.25 to 0.20 based on the studies and commitment to xeriscape. The replat was approved with changes on 1/24 of 2024. This made it more affordable again with other communities, but with the slowdown in the market, development movement has been stalled but is getting close to allowing it to move forward. With the adoption of a new rate policy, permits for Saddleback will increase roughly another $7,425. I believe we've always tried to be a good partner with the town and slowed down construction when there were issues with the water and sewer plants needing to be upsized, but now by waiting to develop, we are seeing rate increases again, making the project unaffordable. Saddleback now could be one of the most expensive permits along the Front Range, making it unattainable to build single-family lots on and move forward. That's why I supplied you guys with the permit list. Why when the site was replatted and improved with the then current rates, can it be grandfathered in with those rates, at least over the 3-year period for the approved plans? Especially after all the consideration to make it affordable with other markets and bring affordable housing to Wellington. I'm going to jump forward because that could all be said for Sage Meadows too, guys. That said, ultimately the board did not need to access the maximum legally supported, and a lesser amount could have been approved and justified, but opted to go with the highest amount allowed anyway. In my opinion, this is making Wellington unaffordable to build new homes, again, within the Saddleback subdivision, which will end up in 0 lots being built and 0 permits being pulled for new construction. I got 1 paragraph, but
Thank you.
okay. Well, hopefully you guys can read the rest.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. With this being fresh information in front of us right now, I'd like to defer to town staff to look into this and maybe come back with future discussion for the board.
Absolutely. We're already looking into it and we will come back to the board with some options, potentially through a work session or an opportunity for discussion.
Okay.
Thank you.
No other public comment? Okay. First off, I'm gonna have a presentation tonight in Outgoing Trustee. So tonight I want to take a moment to recognize Trustee Dave Wiegand for his dedication to the town over the last 4 years. Insightful conversations and ways that you would think about things. I think the town board, everybody appreciates you for who you are and everything that you contributed to the board. So we did come together and make a little plaque here for you, which I'll just hand to you. Thank you.
We have to do a picture. Yeah.
Okay.
I was not quick enough.
Right here in front, all the trustees.
Right front.
That's a great idea.
Take them out. With the squeaky chair. Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
You have to be over there.
Yeah.
For me.
Hold on, I'm trying to get rid of the video there. We're almost there. Hold on, give us a second. I don't know, sorry, Hannah.
Meeting's over.
Ready, cheese. Very nice. Thanks, guys.
All right, so next up, we have a presentation. Lucas Flax, senior engineer, will present on it. It's going to be the water treatment plant admin and lab building design.
Good evening, Mayor and Trustees. Nathan Ewer, Deputy Director of Public Works. I just wanted to jump in here before Lucas give a brief introduction. I think this is the first time he's presented, and he's probably going to get to do it twice tonight. So lucky him. Lucas Flax is a senior engineer. He came on in about September last year. Very experienced in development type projects. This project specifically, when I found out he was coming on board, I wanted him to take over. It's development, right? It's a building. He gets to work with architects, his favorite. So with that being said, I'll turn it over to Lucas, but we're very excited to have him on board, and this will be the first of 2 times you see him tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan. Mr. Mayor, trustees. Like you said, I'm Lucas Flax, engineer with Public Works. I'm excited to be presenting on this project, the water treatment plant administration laboratory building. I think the last time the board saw this was in September, so it's been a while. So the purpose of this presentation is informative, to let you guys know what we've done and where we're going. So kind of an overview, we'll give a recap of the project, go through the existing conditions, what's out there now and why we need this new building, review the schematic design that Clerk and Anderson has helped us with, go through next steps, some financials, and then we'll open it up to questions. All right, so quick timeline of this project. Back in 2021, this project was started and cut right away with the water treatment plant expansion project. In 2022, a temporary construction trailer was brought on site for the staff. Before that, they sat in a single room in the existing building. It's currently just used for storage now, and it was the only climate controlled space. So now they at least have a temporary construction trailer, which we'll talk more about later. In 2023, this project was included in the 5-year water fund CIP. In 2024, then it was pushed back and a year, and that's when the expansion project was completed. So in 2025, this project got going again. Funding for the design of it was appropriated and construction plan for this year, 2026. Last year, in July, we sent out a request for proposal, came out with Clerk and Anderson architects and engineers to bring on board. In September, this board approved that contract, and we began concept design and schematic design. Over the next couple months, the staff worked with Clerk and Anderson. We had 5 meetings to review the concept design, and then they took that to a schematic design level, presenting it to us in December, and that's kind of where we're at right now. So why do we need it? There's 2 main purposes, 1 for office space, 2 for laboratory space. Current conditions, like I mentioned, there's a trailer out there. This is where they sit. It's costing the town $1,700 a month for this trailer. That's not a permanent solution. There's no water either, so staff has to leave the trailer to go use the restroom anytime they want, which when we do have a winter isn't that much fun. In addition, what we noticed the past few weeks, this trailer is not set up for the Colorado wind. It actually got knocked off its stands a couple weeks ago and lost electricity, causing some problems with the staff. So it's been fixed, but we definitely need a solution. Lab space. It currently has inadequate ventilation. As you can see in the picture on the left, there's very limited storage, limited surface space. The picture in the middle is the analyzer panels, which is not in the lab, it's outside the lab. So the rinse water filter is not plumbed to it. The plumbing that it does have, it uses copper pipe, which is no longer an approved material. Safety issues, the eye wash you can see is around the corner from the lab, so not convenient, and there is no safety shower. We did initially look at using this space and remodeling it instead of doing a new building, but that just was deemed not feasible. The cost that would require to bring the building up to speed was more than a new building would cost. The building was built in the 80s, does not have central HVAC. There are 10 to 20 foot deep trains and filter galleries. So we deemed this not an appropriate solution and moved on to looking to a new building. And what we came up with is what you can see on screen. It's approximately a 40 foot by 60 foot rectangular building. The architectural blocking included entry and shared spaces, an administrative zone, laboratory zone, new systems and support, including a new skater room. This is where it would go on site, the little red rectangular west of the 1 million gallon tank. What's great about this is that this was planned for with expansion, so the generator can accommodate it. There's no additional capital costs, and utilities are already stubbed to this location. Some renderings that Clark and Anderson came up with. On the left is the front, which would be northwest, and to the right is the back, southwest. So design-wise, we looked at it architecturally to prioritize durability, efficiency, and flexibility. It supports a clear, dirty to clean workflow, so the lab's in the back of the building where it can stay clean. And the simple rectangular form produces cost effectiveness, ease of construction, and future adaptability. On the interior, you can see top right would be the new lab, plenty of space, plenty of storage, has movable desks for staff to move around. Bottom right would be the open floor plan for their office space concept. And then on the left is the training room with great views that would be open to any Town of Wellington staff to use. We threw in some elevations of the building in there for your review. Financials. I've been told the slide's kind of confusing, so bear with me and I'll answer any questions. But Clark and Anderson's remaining design service contract is about $190,000. There's about $133,000 left in the design GL, which has been appropriated for this year. The remaining portion of that would come from the construction GL 204-80-5066. 900,000 of that was appropriated for this year, and 900,000 is planned for next year for a total of 1.8 million. The schematic design that I've showed you, the initial cost estimate comes back at 1.6, so we're looking pretty good in shape there. The remaining schedule, this has changed a little bit. You got a little bit later start, but the main thing is that second bullet point is the value engineering review. This is actually going to be more towards the middle of May. Design development should be complete at the beginning of May. And so the town will get a chance to really look at the design, make sure the staff has everything they need, and that will still be under budget. So bid package complete in September, and we should be coming back to you guys in October with a contractor to select. So in conclusion, this project is greatly needed. Funds have been appropriated, and we're well underway and moving in a good direction. We're really excited for this as a staff and looking forward to coming back to you guys in October with a contractor. With that, I'll answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? Questions? Trustee Cannon.
Great job. Thank you.
All right. Comments?
Yes. Thank you, Mayor, for now. I just feel like this is so necessary. When you look at the conditions that you have right now, they're not OSHA compliant, and that opens a town up to a whole bunch of liability, workers' comp, possible issues, fines, etc. So if anyone's thinking this is, a lot of money spent, it's a lot of money spent in a good way to protect our staff and also make sure that we're just compliant. So thank you for the presentation.
You're welcome.
I'm excited for, looking forward to all the increased safety measures. So thank you so much.
Heard about the trailer falling off the stands out there. What a fun time. I'll bet that was. So keep it under budget and good luck.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's great, especially having a bigger, better laboratory so they can move around and actually get stuff done in there with more than one person, two people at a time. So thank you very much.
Yep. All right. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Next up, Mr. Nick Redavid, our finance director / town treasurer, will present on the next item, which is the 2025 year-end treasurer's report.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and Trustees. I am Nick Redavid, Finance Director and Town Treasurer. Thank you for your time tonight to review the Treasurer's Report for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2025. And thank you for your flexibility in rescheduling this presentation tonight as I was unexpectedly out ill 2 weeks ago. I'll start tonight with a quick finance department update, and then we'll review the revenues and expenditures as compared to the adopted budget through the end of fiscal year 2025, which is reflected in the treasurer's report included in the packet. As usual, I like to call attention to the note on this slide that states governmental accounting standards allow for prior periods adjustments, and as such, there may be differences in this report that were not included in previous versions. These standards ensure that financial statements present a true and fair view of the financial position and performance of the town at the time the report is generated. Governmental accounting follows the modified accrual basis of accounting, in which revenue is recorded when it is available to spend and expenses are recorded when the obligation occurs. The information provided tonight comes from financial reports generated on March 2nd, 2026, with revenue and expenditure dated through December 31st, 2025, including period 13 expenditures and adjustments. The finance department hit a big milestone this month, as all department staff has now been with the town for at least a year. This consistency has led to a new era in financial management for the town. As processes continue to improve, service standards are elevated, and efficiencies have been created. Recent accomplishments include the completion of the audit of financial statements for fiscal year 2024, including the submission to the Colorado Office of the State Auditor and Department of Local Affairs, confirmation of eligibility for and receipt of conservation trust funds, and authorization of release to the Larimer County Treasurer. As of April of this year, all delayed funds will be turned over to the town. The municipal utilities rate and fee study was completed in February, with new commercial water rates, irrigation-only water rates, all wastewater rates, and all stormwater rates being adopted and becoming effective on April 1st. Notice has been provided to residents in the town's newsletter and posted on the website, and a statement insert will be included with March municipal utilities billing. And lastly, and not included on this slide, as we were notified on Friday, March 13th, the Government Finance Officers Association announced that the town received the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award for the budget of fiscal year 2026. This reflects the commitment of this board and town staff to meeting the highest principles of governmental budgeting, satisfying nationally recognized guidelines for effective budget presentation, and represents a significant achievement for the town. This is the third consecutive budget in which the town has received this award, 24, 25, and 2026. As we look ahead, goals for 2026 developed by the finance department team in collaboration with administration leadership include the introduction of a general fund revenue forecasting tool, which will be shared with the Finance Advisory Board at their April 6th meeting and introduced to the Board of Trustees during the 2027 budget development season, Department staff are hard at work updating and creating standard operating procedures in alignment with the adopted financial management policies that take into consideration all aspects of department operations. While there are several benchmarks the team intends to surpass throughout the year, a specific one to call attention to is planned enhancements to the accounts payable system. The project will streamline invoice and purchase order processing through the use of town's existing financial management software, including the incorporation of signature authority limits in line with approved policies and ensuring record retention requirements are met. The goal is to create a more efficient process for staff and leadership across all departments at no additional cost, with proper controls in place systematically. As we move into the analysis of the town's budget performance for fiscal year 2025, included in the treasurer's report, first is an overview of operating revenue and expenditure in each of the town's funds. The general, street, and drainage funds exceeded budget and operating revenue, and the budget shortfalls in water, sewer, and park funds were expected result of the lack of impact and tap fee revenue seen throughout the year. The general fund showed strong revenue as payment of property taxes for delayed audits for fiscal years 2023 and 2024 were received, and the town's strong sales tax revenue exceeded budget projections, which we'll dive into in a few slides. I do want to note that the budget for 2025 property taxes was $2.1 million in revenue, and of the $4.6 million in property tax revenue received, over $2.2 million were for 2025, representing 104.5% of budget, nearly an additional $100,000. Investment earnings remained strong across all funds this past year as well. Operating expenditures compared to budget for the full year of 2025 shows many positive trends. Almost all funds were 10% or more under budget, and there was substantial savings in the water fund due to a reduced North Poudre Irrigation Company payment. Wages and salary expenses across all departments in the general fund were also 10% below budget. The sewer enterprise fund managed electricity use better than anticipated in 2025, which was the first full year with the new treatment facility and demonstrates the commitment of the reclamation facility staff to be as efficient and responsible as possible. A significant portion of the drainage enterprise fund is the annual payment to the Box Elder Basin Regional Stormwater Authority of user charges and impact fees revenue collected on their behalf by the town's municipal utilities. Due to the reduction in impact fee revenue, the corresponding impact fee payment to the authority was reduced as well. And lastly, in the park fund, not only were expenses related to recreation nearly $30,000 under budget, but as you see on this next slide, recreation program fee revenue was over $37,000 more than anticipated, showing just how important the Parks and Recreation Department is to our community. Operating revenues as of December 31st for the town's governmental funds, general, street, and park, are reflected here by category. Building permits were the only category that did not meet projections, with the exception of tax revenue in the park fund due to a $112,000 shortfall in building materials use tax driven by building permits. Excuse me. Sales tax revenue ended the year strong with an annual growth rate of 6.5%. This accounts for retail sales that took place through December 31st. The decrease in December 2025 from December 2024 is largely due to reduced prices and inflation versus the previous year, resulting in smaller sales receipts. The budget of fiscal year 2025 projected a 5% decrease in sales tax revenue year over year, yet retailers serving Wellington's residents outperformed projections and many other communities in the area. Operating expenditures in each department across all town governmental funds came in at or below budget for fiscal year 2025. This once again demonstrates staff's commitment to diligently managing costs, reducing unnecessary spending, and being fiscally responsible with taxpayer dollars. Some large ticket items here include $72,000 under budget in legal and professional services in administration, position vacancy savings in building and planning and public works admin, $56,000 under budget in shop supplies and street maintenance expenses, in addition to over $14,000 in snow management savings for the street fund, and $24,000 under budget on water volume usage at the parks with improved sprinkler programming. In conclusion, the budget performance summary for 2025 end of year confirms that the town exceeded expectations. Net revenue over expenditures in total, which includes debt service payments and capital project expenditures that are not funded by loans, even when adjusting general fund revenue by removing property tax revenue from previous years, was over $1.2 million. While water fund revenues were 34% under budget, expenditures were 47% under budget, resulting in net revenues over expenditures of $2.7 million after debt service payments, as expected from the last treasurer's report presentation. And to end on one more highlight, debt service payments in the park fund has been fully satisfied as the Wellington Community Park loan has been paid in full. Thank you again for your time tonight and for your continued support. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions from the board? Trustee Lauer. Moyer.
One day you'll get it right. This is awesome, Mr. Redavid. So glad that those audits are complete and we have many things to celebrate. So thank you for your diligence with that and just coming in and taking charge of that big project and getting us all through that. That is definitely something to be celebrated. And then I just wanted to point out that the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award is not just for a pretty budget. It's for something that serves as a policy document, has financial plans, has transparency, uses good communication. So it's not just an attractive piece of paper or packet of paper that we have. It's a real, true document that can be used by the community to look deeply at our financials. So thank you for all your hard work on that.
Thank you.
And the team.
Just want to let you know, I appreciate all the work that you and all the staff does. I know everything that the staff is doing is for the good of the town, and this right here is a good example. So thank you.
Thank you.
I also wanted to thank staff for their dedication for minimizing spending all across the board. So that's incredibly impressive how much money was saved there. So thank you so much for everyone, all the leaders in the room.
Mr. Cannon, Crystal Cannon.
I agree. I mean, staff is doing a bang up job, not just you, Nick, and your team, but also Patty, you've got a good staff there. And you've got some good oversight. And I am so proud of this staff and what it's doing for Wellington. Thank you.
Well, I'll just say the same thing that everybody else has. Congratulations to staff coming in under operating expenditure for literally every category in the budget is very impressive. So thanks to the leadership team. Thank you to staff. Thank you to all our boots on the ground. You guys do a fantastic job.
Thank you for everything you do, the whole team. It is really cool that everybody's been here for a year now. Really shows more consistent numbers and things of that nature, or just making sure everything's being accounted properly, coding and everything of that nature. Back when, 4 years ago, roughly, we weren't at that, and now we are. I think due to your leadership as a whole is huge with the team and Ms. Garcia as well, but really glad to have you on board and the team you're working with. So I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up is going to be the Cleveland Avenue Improvement Project presentation. It's going to be Mr. Lucas Flax again for us.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and trustees. I'm Lucas Flax, engineer in public works. This is the Cleveland Avenue Improvement Project. The purpose is just a status update, let you guys know where we're at, and then a fun little video fly-through rendering at the end, which I think everyone's waiting for. For this presentation, we'll do a quick review of the project goals, review the funding, recap the benefits for the project, go through next steps, and then we'll do the presentation. So, recap of the project goals. This is a signature legacy project for the town. The goals are to improve pedestrian and vehicular safety, provide accessibility, meets modern standards, improve lighting, expand on-street parking, new storm drainage, enhance landscaping, support the town's strategic initiative for economic development, and support the town's Safe Routes to School program. A recap of the funding. Back in 2023, the town secured several federal and state grants that totaled a little over $4.4 million. In December of that year, we signed an IGA between the town of Wellington and CDOT. In 2024, the town awarded JUB as our design engineer. Earlier this year in February, we received the final CDOT clearances to begin the construction phase, which is where we're at now. And at the end of February, the project was advertised to bid. The benefits of the project, which I'll go ahead and move forward to the next slides, which show the design. But the design doubles the on-street parking spaces to over 92, provides fully ADA accessible sidewalks and ramps, upgrades lighting, we'll add 36 new trees and other additional landscaping. It replaces and upgrades the landscape irrigation system. It provides more new amenities such as benches, bike racks. It's got programmable space for business use. It'll create a seamless, consistent backdrop for Main Street businesses, visitors, and residents for the coming decades. And the project also includes pedestrian safety improvements. All right, so moving forward, some of the wins. So design is complete, right-of-way acquisition is complete, contract documents are complete, CDOT design clearances are complete. We just have one more to get, the concurrence to award. And so we are in the construction phase. Last Friday, March 20th, we had our bid opening and we are currently evaluating those bids. At the next April Board of Trustees meeting, we plan to present to you guys again the consideration for the construction contract award and then beginning construction in May of this year. With that, we can go to the fly-through presentation. This was created by AIRS, and it was done with DOLA funding to help kind of show what this will look like at the end of the year. Again, I just want to thank AIRS for putting that together. I think they really captured the Main Street community. The existing buildings look like they are out there, which is awesome. People can take pride in seeing what's going to be in front of their buildings. Yeah, it shows a lot of the amenities, a lot of the benefits that we just went through and talked about. And this will be posted to the town's website so everyone can see and get a picture of it. I don't know if maybe we can play it again without the sound and we can take any questions or comments as we go. I have been told that historically there's been a rooster that ran around downtown, and AIRS did include that in the video somewhere. I have yet to find it, but maybe you guys will have better luck.
A question I have is the railing along the diagonal parking. Is that where they always are? Is the railing? Is that a safety feature, I assume?
It is a safety feature.
Okay.
The railing is long. Some of the grading we had to match between the existing buildings and the new street design to incorporate the drainage that we've included. there's more than a 6-inch drop off, and that's where you'll see the railing.
Oh, I see. Okay, and that's probably a safety feature for ADA kind of things too. The flowers, the landscaping, the trees. Oh, sorry. I thought we were just narrating this.
Some of us are focused on the rooster.
I know. I'm looking.
I do want to say, like, and I know, I mean, I wouldn't always feel comfortable speaking for all of us, but I feel like one of the reasons we all ran and wanted to be on this board was to make our town a better place, safer, more beautiful, more welcoming. And this just, this is why I'm very, very excited for our town and all that this will bring. Thank you.
I don't see the rest of them.
I'm extremely excited about this, and I know that the board has taken steps to help the businesses survive it, and which is going to be a big thing, but that just shows how much we're committed to the strength of Wellington. Thank you.
I didn't see the rooster.
No rooster. There is.
I'm gonna have to watch it a million times now.
Questions? Questions? No questions? No questions.
It's amazing. Thank you.
Oh, they're not showing that rooster for us. How accurate is it? No.
I think they're gonna make us watch it.
On to the consent agenda. Ms. Clerk, will you please read the title or the items on the consent agenda?
February 24th, 2026 meeting minutes and resolution number 09-2026, a resolution approving the Baker Tilly Advisory Group LP Fourth Amended Engagement Letter to provide financial management services to the town of Wellington.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion on the consent agenda?
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Ms. Clerk, make it a roll call, please.
Trustee Wiegand,
Yes.
Trustee Cannon,
Yes.
Trustee Daly,
Yes.
Trustee Moyer,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mason,
Yes.
Mayor Shosse.
Yes.
Mayor, that motion passes.
Thank you. All right, on to the action items of the evening. Ms. Clerk, will you please read the title for item F1?
Resolution number 07-2026, approving a contract to buy and sell real estate for the acquisition of property for expansion, modification, and improvement of Centennial Park, and authorizing the town administrator to execute the contract and related documents.
Thank you. And Mr. Cody Bird and Billy Cooksey will present on this item.
Good evening, Mayor and Board. Appreciate the opportunity to be here this evening. As was introduced, I have the pleasure to present an opportunity to the Board of Trustees. A while back, the town staff was approached by a property owner and was inquiring if the town would be interested in acquiring that piece of property that they had that they were willing to sell. And the property is located adjacent to Centennial Park. So staff said, yes, we're interested. We brought that back to the Board of Trustees in executive session to seek some direction. And ultimately, we have recommended moving forward with an acquisition of that property. Volume doesn't help. Advance the slides would be the one to click. So this property is adjacent to Centennial Park. The property owner is willing to sell and has been working closely with town staff to negotiate terms of a purchase and sale agreement. This is a strategic location. It's identified in several of our town planning documents and policies as a need to increase our community and gathering space, specifically downtown. I'll touch base on this a little bit more here. So it is a strategic location for the town to acquire properties, and it would enable expansion and improvements to Centennial Park, which has been identified as a very important aspect of our community. And I think you saw glimpses of it in a fly-through of our Cleveland Avenue project, so you can see the significance there. I don't have a fly-through to present tonight, but I got a couple pictures. So this is the property location. The address is 3818 Cleveland Avenue. It's a residential property, and it's immediately adjacent to the basketball court that's in Centennial Park. So it's adjacent to our existing park facilities on two sides and fronts Cleveland Avenue. There is a residential structure on the site, as well as some detached block construction garage, and quite a bit of vegetation that needs a little bit of maintenance. This Centennial Park has been identified in several of our plans as a critical piece of infrastructure for the town for parks and recreation. Our comprehensive plan specifically identifies goals and policies for expanding Centennial Park to basically include that whole block for park improvements someday. One of the specific recommendations that town staff heard from the Parks Advisory Board when we were developing the comprehensive plan was to consider acquisition of any of the privately owned parcels in that block as they became available. So when this became available to us, we immediately said, well, yes, we want to pursue that. It's identified in our plans. We also heard directly from our residents in adoption of the comprehensive plan that this was a desire from our residents to really protect that gem for our downtown and to pursue expansion and improvements in Centennial Park. We know that the comprehensive plan also identifies Centennial Park as being a complete kind of redesign effort. And we're not talking about that today. There's still other pieces that would need to take place, including an overall design budget, obviously, and the things of that nature. But this is one of those stepping stones that will help enable getting to that redesign someday. So I'm going to pass it over to Mr. Cooksey that's the down button. Is the
Good evening, Mayor and Trustees. From a park and rec perspective, the proposed land acquisition, it implements the vision outlined in the 2015 Park and Trails Master Plan. The plan identifies the opportunity to expand and relocate some amenities, possibly maybe the skate park. This creates the ability to rethink how we use Centennial Park and also re-amenitize downtown and expand what we can actually do in that park for the community. Specifically, it allows us to evolve into a more flexible community space. And being adjacent to Cleveland, I think that's very important to everybody as we expand Cleveland and try to get people downtown and increase our business. So opening up this space in the future, this is, like Cody said, just one of the steps to be able to give more well-suited and flexible space for programming, civic use, and special events. Acquiring the land adjacent to the park is a key step in this vision, but I think most importantly, this has been stated by our citizens in the 2015 Park and Trails Master Plan that this is the vision that we want to go on. So it's not a new direction for us. It's just an implementation of longstanding community-driven plans. Today, Centennial Park is one of the town's most heavily used spaces. It supports events, recreation programming, everyday use by residents of all ages, but it's limited. That level of activity speaks to its importance, but it highlights the fact that we need to do more for our residents down there. The park was not designed to accommodate the volume and variety of uses that we see today. Additionally, constrained amenities and infrastructure limit the ability to expand currently. So programming of any sort, specifically hosting events, is really hosting large events and expanding those events is becoming more and more difficult for the entire town to move forward with. Essentially, we're maximizing the space that we currently have, but we are not optimizing it. And that's what this gives us the opportunity to start looking forward to. Along with the 2015 master plan, we do have some preliminary findings from our 2025-2026 PROS master plan. Our current planning basically finds that Centennial Park currently is only in a fair condition. That's lower than good and definitely lower than exceptional. So as it is right now, the preliminary findings are saying we need to do something with this park and make it more usable. It emphasizes that the downtown community park should support events with infrastructure like electrical access, restrooms, drinking water, ADA compliant features, and more flexible gathering spaces. So this is coming directly from what the process we're doing right now is. Acquiring the space drives directly into that vision. Additionally, data shows that we are delivering strong programs, but we are limited. The data is going to be presented in the PROS master plan, but we already have some of that says we're very limited in our ability to expand. Field data further supports this, identifying access challenges limited size, and aging infrastructure as key issues. Put simply, the site cannot fully evolve without additional spaces. And finally, maybe most importantly, are all the statistics that we're finding from the 2025-2026 Pros Master Plan coming from that statistically valid survey. This is coming directly from our residents. Special events are extremely important to our community. Rank number one, number two on so many different questions asked to our community. We can't continue to support thousands of households' needs without getting more space and expanding. The land adjacent to Centennial Park gives us the strategic opportunity to meet that demand by expanding the space, improving functionality, and creating a true community hub. The acquisition is more than just about the land. It's about delivering on adopted plans, responding to demonstrated needs, and investing in spaces that will serve Wellington residents for years to come.
And we won't dwell long on this slide, but this is your Board of Trustees strategic plan for the town. And of course, one of the goals is to cultivate community spaces, including revitalizing, reinvesting, retaining, revitalizing, and investing in meeting and gathering spaces, of which Centennial Park, of course, is. I'm going to keep this slide brief also, but I think it would be remiss if we didn't discuss it here. There's a subsequent action item on your agenda for more specific appropriation for funds to enable these things to happen. But we do want to highlight, as part of this presentation, that funding is available for acquisition and modifications and improvements to this piece of property. There are restricted funds in our budget for limited to acquisition of property. That's from fee in lieu of land dedication fees collected by the town. We also have our conservation trust fund that enables acquisition, development, redevelopment, cleanup, and things of that nature, as well as park programming. So there are dedicated funding sources for this type of an effort, and that is what we're proposing to use. And those funds are available with the adoption of the subsequent agenda item, if that's the will of the board. As part of the negotiation process with the owner, staff did explore options for creative financing, including an owner carry option, and we determined that those were not feasible for this particular acquisition. So we are recommending a simple cash close, and that was agreeable to the owners or the sellers in this agreement as well. There's a complete contract signed by the sellers in your agenda packet. It includes a sale price of $325,000. That was a negotiated price, which was they did come back down to our original offer, so we're very grateful for the sellers in consideration of that. So for moving forward for staff recommendation, the way we structured this report, we are asking for the board to approve or authorize staff to execute the purchase and sale agreement, or to enable the town administrator to execute that agreement and any necessary agreements or documentation necessary to transact on that land. We are anticipating undertaking due diligence under that standard contract form. If authorized by the board, we would initiate some things like a boundary survey, lead and asbestos testing, things of that nature, to make sure that we know what we're getting into with the structures. At the end of the day, our hope is to finish that close in a 90 to 120 day time period, pending some possible extensions if there are some hiccups in those provisions are outlined in the contract to protect the town in the event that anything were to come up. Pretty standard language. If we're able to complete all of that, and we think that we will be able to, we are also recommending, rather than reuse of the site, to simply remove the existing structures. We know there's a longer range vision for Centennial Park. But in the meantime, we don't want to have tenants. We don't want to have liabilities with existing structures. We don't see a value in reutilizing those existing structures. So our desire would be to clean up the space, clean up the vegetation, and restore that area back to a condition that can be utilized as park and open space and easy to maintain for our parks and recreation departments. So that's our recommendation and our goal. And I've included here, this is the motion recommendation from your packet. There's a lot of other information in the packet. I tried to put as many words as I could in writing so I could say less here tonight. but I'm certainly happy to answer any questions that the board might have regarding the contract, the negotiations, or this proposal moving forward.
Thank you, sir. Any questions before I open it up for public comment from the board? No questions. Okay. Okay. Now, any public comment on this item? Member of the public wishing to speak will be given 3 minutes. State your name at the podium and sign in afterwards. Just for easy use.
Good evening. I think most of you know me, John Evans. I'm current chair of the Prost board. I just wanted to speak for a few minutes about why this is important for what we see as an expansion eventually of Centennial Park. You could drive down Cleveland right now and never see Centennial. This would open it up for our main gathering spaces. And then I could just see, 4th of July, we've got chairs out, we've got extra spaces for people. And eventually we would hope to redo Centennial in its entirety. I know that's not what we're talking about today, but that actual piece of property to open up to Cleveland would be a big part of welcoming people into that park and people enjoying the open spaces that we do have downtown. Because like I said, you could drive right by it and never know it was there if you weren't paying attention. So from the pro standpoint, this is something we've talked about for years, that we wanted a big gathering space. We want openness. We want it to contribute to downtown. And the more we can open that space up for people to see, and then eventually moving forward, rebuilding Centennial, making a great space out of it. I think this is a big portion of it right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Other public comment? Do I hear a motion?
I make a motion to adopt resolution number 07-2026, a resolution approving a contract to buy and sell real estate for the acquisition of the property for expansion, modification, and improvement of Centennial Park, and authorizing the town administrator to execute the contract and related documents.
Second.
Are there any final comments or direction from the board on this item? No. All right, Ms. Clerk, can you get a roll call, please?
Trustee Moyer,
Yes.
Trustee Wiegand,
Yes.
Trustee Cannon,
Yes.
Trustee Daly,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mason,
Yes.
Mayor Shosse.
Yes.
Mayor, that motion passes.
Thank you. Ms. Clerk, please read the title for item F2.
Public hearing for and consideration of resolution number 08-2026, a resolution adjusting appropriations of the town of Wellington, Colorado for the fiscal year beginning January 1, 2026 and ending on December 31st, 2026, and authorizing expenditure of restricted funds.
Thank you. I will now open the public hearing for this item, and Mr. Redavid and Mr. Cooksey will present.
Good evening again, Mayor and Trustees. Director Cooksey and I bring you tonight a resolution that appropriates restricted funds for a new capital improvement project for the purchase and development of a public site as described in the contract that was just approved by the adoption of resolution number 7/2026. As this is a proposed adjustment to the budget for fiscal year 2026, this agenda item serves as a public hearing for and consideration of resolution number 08-2026. And required public notice was published in the Coloradoan on March 22nd, 2026. I'll keep this brief as Directors Byrd and Cooksey just provided extensive detail regarding this transaction. This resolution will create a new capital improvement project in the Park Fund that is offset in part by restricted funds in the Park Fund and in part by authorizing a transfer of restricted funds currently in the Conservation Trust Fund to the Park Fund. As reflected in the audit of financial statements for fiscal year 2024, nearly $1.4 million in the Park Fund is restricted for capital improvements of the total fund balance of $1.9 million. Of that, $87,500 was accepted by the town in 2024 as fee in lieu of park dedication from SH of Colorado Incorporated, as authorized by the Second Amendment to the Memorandum of Agreement for Public Improvements, Sage Meadow Subdivision. These funds are the town's most restricted use funds to be used solely for the acquisition of open space sites and land areas by the town. The real estate purchase of land adjacent to Centennial Park satisfies this requirement. The remaining $362,500 of the proposed $450,000 capital improvement project would be reimbursed through transfers from the town's Conservation Trust Fund that is funded by the Colorado Department of Local Affairs, commonly known as lottery receipts. As of the February certification filed with DOLA for the 2025 annual report, cash on hand in the town's Conservation Trust Fund is over $1.5 million. Colorado revised statutes and DOLA outline eligible expenditures for Conservation Trust Fund spending, and all aspects of this project, including acquisition, development, and maintenance of the property, are authorized. And I have a copy of that. Staff is recommending adoption of resolution number 08-2026 to create the new Centennial Park expansions, modifications, and improvements capital project that will be funded in the budget of fiscal year 2026 by restricted funds. We're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions on this item? No questions. All right, I'll now open up for public comment. Any public comment on this item? No public comment. I'll now close the public hearing. Do I hear a motion?
I move to adopt resolution number 08-2026, a resolution adjusting appropriations for the town of Wellington, Colorado for the fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2026 and ending on December 31st, 2026, and authorizing expenditure of restricted funds.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion before we take a vote? No. Ms. Clerk, make a roll call, please.
Trustee Gately?
Yes.
Trustee Moyer?
Yes.
Trustee Wiegand?
Yes.
Trustee Cannon?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mason?
Yes.
Mayor Shosse?
Yes.
Mayor, that motion passes.
Thank you. All right. Ms. Clerk, let's read the title for item F3.
Public hearing for ordinance number 03-2026, considering approval of minor subdivision of Outlot A Wellington Downs subdivision.
Thank you. And I will now open public hearing for this item. Mr. Byrd will present on this.
Thank you, Mayor and Board. I'll have to make an admission here. There's a name on this. Ms. Brittany Lenore, our planner 3, was going to present this. She's done a lot of work in coordinating this effort and working with our applicant. And she had to go home sick, so I apologize. I'm standing in for her. Confident I've been involved in the project, and we've got our applicant team here also, but do acknowledge all of Ms. Lenore's hard work, and she wasn't here to present it. So please accept those apologies. I'll also acknowledge that this agenda item is for a public hearing. There's a subsequent item that is the actual action on the minor subdivision. So considered in two parts so that you can close the public hearing and then go to the ordinance consideration. Just real quickly, because this is a land use public hearing, I'd like to review the procedures for that. I'll do a staff presentation for this application. I'll invite the applicants, if they choose to share any additional information that they would like to regarding their application. And then we'll allow any questions from the board just to clarify what was presented by staff and the applicant team. We'll then move into a public hearing to allow public comments. We typically allow 3 minutes for public commenters, if any. And following the close of public comments, there would be an opportunity, if desired by the applicant, to respond to any of the public comments. Staff would have an opportunity to make closing remarks, and then we would turn it back over to the board to consider your findings and then your subsequent action item. Any questions on public hearing procedures for a land use hearing? Excellent. To orient you very, very quickly here, just so you know the property in question, I know you've read your packets. This is for a property that's on the east side of I-25 at Jefferson Avenue, just south of Baumgars. The proposed application is for a minor subdivision. Currently, the property, it's about 1.3 acres. It's currently platted as an outlot, which cannot be developed on without a subsequent approval to make it a lot, which is eligible for development. It's a really pretty minor changes to the site from a plat standpoint, but it does require that public hearing. So that's why we're here tonight. So knowing a brief, and the application itself is for development of a residential apartment complex for 20 residential units. So that is the project for tonight. The board's consideration is on the plat itself. So with that high level overview, I'll get into more details in just a moment, but I want to invite for the board on a public hearing, if you have any conflicts of interest that need to be disclosed, you can do that now. And also if you have any ex parte communications on this item, which would be any communications or information received outside of tonight's hearing that you need to disclose, this would be an appropriate time to do that also. So if there are any conflicts of interest or ex parte communications, I would invite those now.
No.
Very good. Thank you. Housekeeping items are out of the way. So for this item, I'd like to present first an overview of the subdivision or minor subdivision process. This is currently plotted as Outlot A, Wellington Downs subdivision PUD. It did go to the Planning Commission on March 2nd of this month for public hearing. And the Planning Commission considered findings for approval, which we'll go over here in just a moment. The Planning Commission also considered a site development plan for the actual technical criteria for development of the site. And that site plan is not part of the board's consideration for the minor subdivision. That's a final decision by the Planning Commission unless appealed. So you don't have to worry about that, but we have some information just to help you understand the proposal relative to the plat that you're looking at tonight. We will have the public hearing in just a moment, and following all of these, you'll have the opportunity to either approve the minor subdivision, approve the minor subdivision with conditions, or you can deny the application. That would typically be on the second agenda item for that action. So real quickly on the findings for approval, I'm not going to read this word for word, but just as an overview to remind you, these are the findings that you need to consider in reviewing a minor subdivision plat. The Planning Commission reviewed the same findings for approval, and their findings are incorporated in your agenda packet. So you can see what they recommended and the basis for that recommendation. They did recommend approval by a vote of 5-0, and their findings are attached. The findings you consider are consistency with the comprehensive plan, that the subdivision meets the intent of the zone district in which it's located, that there's not any new or increased nonconformities by approval of the plat, that any changes on the plat mitigate to the extent possible any existing or planned public infrastructure, that the conditions of the original plat are not violated, and that the plat is consistent with any other prior approvals like comprehensive plan, downtown master plans, or other plans in this area, of which there are few, but the comprehensive plan is consistent. As I mentioned, here's the site. It's at 4101 Jefferson Avenue at the southeast corner of Jefferson Avenue and the I-25 East Frontage Road. It's 1.3 acres. The proposal for development of the site is for 20 residential apartment units. The improvements on the site, you can see we've included just a snippet from the larger plan set, and there's some documents in your packet as well. And you can see the proposal is 3 buildings, parking, landscaping, site amenities, street lighting, all of those things to affect development of the site. The site plan was approved by the Planning Commission at their March meeting. It was approved with a couple of conditions to mostly technical cleanup things, and the applicant has already addressed most of those. We're finalizing coordination on the remaining pieces of the conditions for approval. So that's moving forward as expected. I know this is super small. There's a larger version in your packet, but this is the subdivision plat. It's effectively a 1-lot plat, and it dedicates additional easements to accomplish emergency access, water line, utilities, things of that nature, drainage. So predominantly, we're making it a buildable lot and dedicating easements as necessary to affect the proposed site development plan that you just got a glimpse of. The property is zone C3, mixed use commercial. Within the mixed use commercial zone district, multifamily apartments is a use by right. So it's an allowed use within that zone district. And as part of your findings, the proposed plat does not violate any of the requirements of the comprehensive plan or the town's code. This slide represents the relationship to the comprehensive plan land use code. In the comp plan, the future land use map identifies the area as low density residential. I know it's hard to see, but there's a tiny little red circle around the property on this map. Scale is always a challenge. But it is identified as low density residential. And then the zoning is C3 mixed use commercial, of which multifamily is an allowed use. For the board's strategic plan, there are one of the goals for growing responsibly is to improve housing diversity. This is for rent apartment units, which we have a significant deficit in our community for that product. So it does meet that goal. There's a second goal or goal number 3 for advancing cohesive and holistic new developments. This certainly meets that criteria in staff's mind. We worked very closely with the applicant team to make sure that the site met all of the technical criteria and was fully integrated in the site. I didn't mention it earlier, but the applicant they own and operate the existing apartment. So this is really kind of an expansion of their existing product and be fully integrated in that neighborhood. And then we wanted to comment on the town's housing needs and affordability assessment. From that effort and the recommendations, there was a projected household demand by 2030 of needing an additional 800 residential units just to keep pace with demand, of which the goal was 20% or more of those units would be brought to market as multifamily or single family attached because of the lack of those housing products in our community to meet affordability goals. So again, this for rent multifamily apartments would meet that or help achieve that goal. So that's the introduction that I have. I'll invite the applicants here in just a moment, but the recommendation at this point is to go ahead and conduct the public hearing, take public testimony, and then close the public hearing. The second item will be the action on the plat itself. I'd like to invite Mr. Morgan Kidder, Connor, last name? Griffin, thank you. Connor Griffin here representing the applicant team. I'd like to invite them if they have any additional information to share.
Good evening, Mayor, trustees. Thank you for having us this evening. I'll be very brief. Staff has done a great job working with us. In a lot of municipalities as of recent, working with a municipality has become increasingly difficult. As far as responsiveness, as far as working with an applicant, your staff is on star. They are great. So I don't have anything really additional to add to this presentation. More than happy to answer any questions that you may have regarding the product. So it's going to be very similar to what we have out there. There are going to be some minor changes that are just code-based changes from when those apartments that are existing were currently built to what we would be currently building. I don't have anything additional other than happy to answer questions, and would like to reserve time following the public comment if there are any questions that we feel we need to rebuttal or provide clarification.
Yeah, by all means. Yeah. Any questions from the board? No. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Any comments from the public on this item? Going once, going twice. Sold. No public comments. I will now close the public hearing up for this item. Do I hear a motion?
So, Mayor, just a clarification on closing the public hearing would be the last step in this item, and your motion would be on the next one.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm closing the public hearing on this item and opening up a motion for the next. Well, no,
It'd be a new
yeah.
next agenda item.
What am I doing?
Fire.
Yeah, fire me. Okay, Ms. Clerk, will you please read the title for item F4? Yeah, it is.
Ordinance number 03-926, approving a minor subdivision of Outlot A, Wellington Downs subdivision.
Thank you. Mr. Berger will present on this.
Thank you, Mayor. Apologies for the complexity there on the agenda. So this is the official action for the minor subdivision of Outlot A, Wellington Downs subdivision PUD. I don't have a lot to share here, but there is an ordinance that was drafted by staff and put in your agenda packet tonight. The action on that ordinance, if approved, would enable that lot to be buildable, and the applicant would be able to move forward with finalizing the plat for signatures, and then subsequently moving forward with development, building permits, and so forth. One minor thing that I wanted to point out on the subdivision plat, sometimes between the final approval and getting signatures, names of entities could change to make sure, or they're getting the right signatures on there. Sometimes line worker labels need to be cleaned up just to make sure that it's in full force and effect. So we did include that as part of this expectation that if there are very minor cleanup items like names and signatures, to make sure that the appropriate entities are reflected, that staff have the ability to work with the applicant to put those on there for the final signatures. But anything that would be of a substantive nature would have to come back to the board. We don't anticipate any of that, but I just wanted to highlight that as a possibility.
Thank you. Questions from board? Trustee Cannon.
Don't have a question, but this is about a finding for approval for this. And of course, as presented, I see that it does meet the approval level, that the subdivision, the minor subdivision is consistent with our comprehensive plan and the intent stated in our land use code. It meets the intent of the zone district which will be located. It also does not result in any increased nonconformities. The minor amendment mitigates to the extent possible any negative impacts on existing or planned facilities in the surrounding neighborhood. The amendment has no effect on the conditions applied to the approval of the plat, does not violate any requirements of the code, and the administrative plat is consistent with any other prior approvals and official plans and policies created under the guidance of that plat or these areas.
Thank you. Trustee Moyer? No. Trustee Wiegand?
I live on the east side of the interstate here, and I know we have a congestion problem over there with the overpass. So this is just another aspect of how bad we need to start looking at getting our overpass increased, built better. So, right now it's kind of dangerous. So, but this is fantastic. It's going to increase our property tax. And hopefully, like I say, it's going to give a little jump start in trying to get the overpass going too. So thank you.
I'm very excited about offering more diversity in our housing. So as an additional finding, I might add that it also matches the needs and requirements of our affordable housing study. So, but that was my only feedback.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Trustee Wiegand, I'm happy to address your concern in tonight's board reports.
All right. I will now open up for public comment.
Already held your public.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Okay. Do I hear a motion?
I move to approve ordinance 03-2026 for a minor subdivision to replat Outlot A, Wellington Downs subdivision PUD.
Second.
Any final comments or discussion? No. Ms. Clerk, make it a roll call, please.
Trustee Cannon,
Yes.
Trustee Daly,
Yes.
Trustee Moyer,
Yes.
Trustee Wiegand.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mason,
Yes.
Mayor Shosse.
Yes.
Mayor, that motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gordon.
Thank you. All right. Next up, Ms. Clerk, will you please read the title for item F5?
Resolution number 06-2026, Cleveland Avenue Business Support Agreement with Main Street.
Thank you. Ms. Kelly Hodeling.
Good evening, Mayor, Trustees. Kelly Hodeling, Deputy Town Administrator. Before you tonight is an agreement between the town and Main Street for our Cleveland Avenue Business Support Program. So the proposed partnership will implement a structured, controlled gift card-based program support for downtown businesses that are directly impacted by Cleveland Avenue construction project. The program guidelines include eligible criteria, financial controls, reporting requirements, and oversight. I spoke with the Main Street Board this morning, and they were supportive of this program. They discussed it at length, and so they've reviewed the guidelines, and they're supportive of working on this program if the Board of Trustees is as well. There are some things I want to point out. In the program guidelines, eligible businesses, so we're really looking at businesses that are right directly impacted on Cleveland Avenue. I recognize that there are going to be other businesses impacted with construction and residents as well. This program is the $20,000 set aside of the budget that is $35,000 that the board had approved. So this $20,000 program, we had to kind of narrow scope on that. And so I do recognize that that could cause additional hardship for other businesses, maybe on 6th Street or additional corridors, but we really had to have a cutoff essentially. So you'll see all those guidelines listed there. Another thing I'd like to point out is eligible winners. I'd also like to note that we said very clearly that people that are not eligible, no town employee, no members of the Board of Trustees, or no members of the Main Street Board. So we will verify that. We just wanted to make sure that there was proper controls in place and that there was good, responsible management of the funds to the public as well. So I will pause for any questions that the board may have.
Thank you. Trustee Kim.
Yes, I'm going to recuse myself because I have an interest in one of the businesses on Main Street, so I will not be part of this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? No? All right. Any comments from the public on the side? No, no public comment. Do I hear a motion?
I move to approve resolution number 06, 2026, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Wellington, Colorado, authorizing the distribution of funds to the Wellington, Colorado Main Street Program to administer the Cleveland Avenue Construction Business Support Fund.
Second.
Ms. Clerk, may I get a roll call, please?
Trustee Wiegand,
Yes.
Trustee Daly,
Yes.
Trustee Moyer,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mason,
Yes.
Mayor Shosse.
Yes.
Mayor, that motion passes with Trustee Cannon.
Thank you.
Recused.
Thank you.
All right. Next item, Ms. Clerk, will you please read the title for item F6?
Resolution number 10-2026, a resolution approving an agreement for legal services for the town of Wellington.
Thank you. Ms. Patty Garcia, Town Administrator, will present on this item.
Good evening, Mayor and Trustees. Thank you very much. So as you all know, Dan Sapienza of Pewter Legal Advisors submitted his resignation to the town as town attorney on October 13th, effective October 29th, 2025. At that time, the Board of Trustees appointed some interim town attorneys, Bell, Gold, Linder, and Scott, who have served the town very well over the interim capacity. And after that, the board did provide direction to staff to issue an RFQ for a new town attorney to be our permanent town attorney. Phone interviews were held on January 27th, where Mayor Pro Tem Mason and Trustee Teets participated in those interviews and requested we bring back Carl Chmil of Dietz and Davis to engage in a in-person interview, which happened last week. So on your agenda tonight is an agreement with Dietz and Davis to engage for town attorney services.
Thank you. Any questions from the board on this item? No. Oh, a comment?
No, I'm ready to make a motion.
Oh, okay. Perfect. Perfect. Any comments from the public on this item? No, no public comment. All right. Do I hear a motion?
I move to approve resolution number 10-2026, a resolution approving an agreement for legal services for the town of Wellington.
Second.
Ms. Clerk, make a roll call, please.
Trustee Wiegand,
Yes.
Trustee Cannon,
Yes.
Trustee Daly,
Yes.
Trustee Moyer,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mason,
Yes.
Mayor Shosse.
Yes.
Mayor, that motion passes.
Thank you. And
I
I'll now
wanted
ask.
to, can I say one thing?
Oh, yeah.
It has been a real joy to get to know Mr. Carl. Mr. Carl. It's like, where are we gonna go? Because he does have this, mornings with Carl or an hour with Carl, whatever. So I'm going to talk to my team about setting something up like that. But he's really been engaged, asking a lot of great questions about projects and things like that. We're learning that he knows a lot of the same people that we're working with outside counsel and things like that, which are really great for us. Because, we know that we're working with a trusted entity, which is something that is really important for our Board of Trustees to have. Someone who's well-versed, well-trusted, and is knowledgeable about local government. So pretty excited to have him on board and looking forward to a future with Mr. Carl.
Thanks, Patty. So now we'll ask the clerk to swear in Mr. Chmil as the town attorney.
If you will raise your right hand. I state your name.
I, Carl Frederick Chmil III,
Do solemnly affirm
do solemnly affirm
that I will support the Constitution and laws of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution and the laws of the United States,
the Constitution and laws of the state of Colorado,
Constitution and laws of the state of Colorado,
the laws and ordinances of the town of Wellington,
laws and ordinances of the town of Wellington, Colorado,
and will faithfully discharge the duties
and I will faithfully discharge the duties
of the office of town attorney
of the office of town attorney
upon which I'm about to enter
upon which I am about to enter
to the best of my ability.
to the very best of my ability.
Wellington.
Thank you. Trustees, thank you very much. I look forward to working with all of you. The interviewing process both interesting and a pleasure, and I'm very impressed with what I've seen and learned so far of your staff, and I'm anxious to get to work. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Welcome aboard. I will now recess the Board of Trustees regular meeting, and I'm going to call to order the library board. Ms. Clerk, will you please take a roll call?
Trustee Moyer,
Still present.
trustee Teets, trustee Wiegand,
Here.
trustee Cannon,
Here.
trustee Daly,
Present.
trustee, Mayor Pro Tem Mason,
Here.
Mayor Shosse,
Here.
Mayor of the Library Board has a quorum.
Thank you. And this is going to be the quarterly update, and Ross LaJeunesse, the library director, will present the update.
Very good. Okay, so you have to use your imagination because I went through the agenda and I was looking at it, I'm like, oh, it's going to be 9:45. So just pretend it's 9:45, okay? Pretend. Good morning, good evening, board. I know. Okay, we're tired. Good evening, Board of Trustees and Mayor. My name is Ross LaJeunesse. For those that are viewing at home, I am the library director. As a director, in any situation I find myself in and communicating with staff to do the same, I am always reading the room. So in that vein, it is late. Full transparency, we are all tired, so making every effort to respect the room and viewing population, 2025 had some challenges, but we faced them head on and we did great. Any questions? Oh, humor. Ross tries humor. I'm kidding, but I will be as succinct and shortened as possible. As an institution, we provide access to information, such as how to read a board packet or agenda item electronically. So I will read directly from the executive summary so that patrons can come in tomorrow happy that they learned something. The executive summary states, in 2025, the Wellington Public Library continued to serve as a cornerstone of the community, balancing strong demand for traditional library services with evolving patron needs and expectations. Usage data, patron growth, and collection activity all point to a library that remains highly relevant, well-utilized, and responsive. The library's mission is to provide equitable access to a broad range of resources and programs that meet the educational, cultural, and informational needs of our community. The library's patron base remains broad and diverse, with the addition of new members for 2025 demonstrating sustained community engagement and continued trust in the library as a valued public resource. Circulation activity in 2025 remains strong, with books accounting for the majority of checkouts, confirming that print materials continue to be central to how our patrons utilize the library, even as formats do diversify. The data reflects that the library remains a heavily used, trusted, and essential public service to our community. Strong circulation, steady patron growth, and continued engagement across age demographics demonstrate both stability and opportunity. The library is well positioned to build on its strengths while continuing to adapt to changing community needs, ensuring continued relevance and impact in the future. So also included in the packet was just kind of a visual year in review. There's a few stats I want to go over. Taking the average population of Wellington, as of today, it was 11,758. So if you take our 8,040 total patrons that we serve, that's 68% of our residents in Wellington, almost 70. Oh, you can raise your eyebrows. Oh, a lot. 38,815 items were circulated. So that is 3.3 items for every single resident in Wellington. Isn't that cool? It's cool. 41,061 community interactions. That doesn't include me out there doing my things. So it's probably more, but that's what I can report on to the state. That's 3.5 interactions per resident a year. I've talked to him 3.5 times, or we have. Overall, we are again proud of the achievements and involvement with our residents. We could not do this without the dedicated support, collaboration, and fierce loyalty of our residents, patrons, numerous volunteers, including the Friends of the Library, keep buying books. That earns us money. The not-for-profit and nonprofit groups in town, local businesses, town departments, we could not do this without every single department in our structure. Larimer County and State of Colorado entities, and you, and you. The support of the board at large is instrumental in allowing us to continue being a small but mighty library that remains highly relevant, well utilized, and responsive. Thank you. Any feedback or questions?
No, none. Trustee Moore.
First of all, awesome job. This is always really fun to see, and you're so good at presenting. Every time I've seen this report, there's an increase in patronage, increase in circulation, increase in community engagement, which is not only impressive, but it does lead me to the question of when are you going to need more capacity, staff, facilities? And of course, it's not in the budget for this year, but if we continue to see this growth, I do want you to consider at what threshold does that trigger a look at expanding or building internal capacity?
I appreciate that question, and I will get back to you with some data. Everybody knows, we are busting out of our footprint. There are so many things I'd like to do because that growth will start to plateau. There's only so much we can do. So, thank you.
Appreciate everything you do. And again, I wish you'd bring a little more energy to the table. But as always, gonna miss you. Thank you.
I'm gonna miss you. It's your last time. I don't think I have to present before you leave, so thank you, Trustee Wheaton.
I recently presented at CSU regarding news sources and our news desert that Wellington is. And part of their study and survey was trust in local sources of information. The top one was library staff, was the top trusted entities of a town. And that was over business owners, that was over teachers, that was over, I would guess, elected officials. And then the lowest one was social media. But that didn't surprise me whatsoever, because I think that our library staff makes such an impression and such just good intent, an opportunity for our community. And that is shown everywhere over your presentation. So thank you so much. CSU has studied you in this sense, and they agree that the library is a great place. Thank you.
Ross, I don't have much to say. I think you do an excellent job, and really appreciate all your staff and love the statistics in here. I mean, you guys just blow it out of the park. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
I come by the library quite often. My wife is always checking out books and doing the circulation. We've dropped off books for sale and to help the library out. And, I'm real proud of staff. And I said that earlier today and how diligently everybody works and how professional they are. But the library's on a different level. I got to tell you, Ross, what you're doing there is fantastic. And the outreach to the community is amazing. And to the children of our community who come to the library to learn, to grow as citizens, as little people, becoming big people. What you guys are doing is just phenomenal. And I'm so proud of our library and its staff and you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rob.
Oh my gosh. You're welcome. Thanks. Bye.
No, you do a great job. This community loves you. They love the library. They love, all the staff that helps out, and just the impact you guys have on the youth and just moving people up and helping people get more knowledge or just entertain themselves in a really great way. Reading books is huge. So thank you for all you do, your insight, your always looking for the next best thing and pushing the library forward. So, yeah, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, I will now adjourn the library board and reconvene the Board of Trustees meeting. And we're moving on to reports. Mr. Town Attorney, do you have anything to report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Given that I've been your town attorney for all of 10 minutes, my report will be brief. I have been asked two legal questions. They were both asked of me before tonight's meeting. I knew the answer sort of to one of them. I do not yet know the answer to the other. So I'm maybe batting 333 right now. That's if I'm lucky. I've learned a great deal in the last 2 months in the interviewing and onboarding process. I need to commend to you and to express my sincere appreciation to Ms. Garcia and Ms. Hill for all of their assistance. They were as professional as any municipal employees I've ever worked with. I've worked with a lot of them around the state. So thank you. Finally, I'm an avocational archaeologist. I'm really looking forward to visiting the Lindenmeyer site. So thank you.
Garcia. Town Administrator.
Thank you. So we had to cancel our meeting on March 10th. Is that correct?
Yeah.
I've never had to request to cancel a meeting due to staff illness. There were so many of us that were ill that we just couldn't, there was no way to have a meeting. So I thank you for your patience in that. Everybody, for the most part, stayed home, got themselves well, and came back to work within about a week. But people were dropping like flies. So it was an interesting time for us. And I thank you for your patience with that and allowing staff to get the rest they needed to so they could work for the town. And it has been said a couple different times tonight. The staff just continues to work to make Wellington an amazing place to be. And so much of that is reflected in the town administrator's report that's posted on the website. That's something that's done on a monthly basis. I encourage people to go take a look at it. If you haven't read the email that I sent, go through it and see everything that staff is working on, the different projects, the different activities that are happening. That's showing just a small portion of what's happening in Wellington. But I do provide that information to the Chamber of Commerce, their board of directors, and to the Main Street Board of Directors for their use, so they're aware. I mean, being a vital part of our community. If there's other organizations you all think might like to have that information, let me know. I'd be happy to pass along the link. One of the things that we are working on, and I know it's in the board has talked about as far as budget and things like that, is emergency preparedness. One of the things we're doing on Friday is Larimer County is hosting a critical infrastructure and utilities tabletop exercise. So we're trying to engage more and more into creating that emergency management plan. We'd like to do the plan and the continuity of operations plan in 2026. We had kind of divided it up into 2 years, but really feeling the need to get both of those items completed this year. So I'll be coming to you with a proposal on how to make that happen, to get that done as quickly as we can. Last, I'd like to thank Trustee Wiegand. And I think I speak for staff as well, how much we truly appreciated you and your time on the board and your willingness to speak your mind and not always just go with the flow. You were willing to stand up for what you believed was right and correct. And that was something to commend you on. So we're going to miss you, but I thank you for your time. I did beg him to run again. I asked, I begged, I coerced. It never happened. So he's going to spend his retirement and enjoy his grandkids and things like that. But I just wanted to tell you, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Garcia. All right, staff communications were in the packet and board reports. Trustee Wiegand.
I do want to thank the residents of Wellington for giving me the privilege to serve in this capacity. It's been an interesting but a great last 4 years, and I just really appreciate this. It's an eye-opener. And the people that we worked with, as far as the trustees, John Gator, Ashley McDonald, and the current board here, you guys have been a pleasure to work with. Not always easy. We don't always agree, but I think one thing that we all had in mind is doing the best for the town that we could. And the town staff, I mean, they're great. I have come to respect every last one of them, even though some of them can't play golf very well, but that's okay. No, and not the present person. No, no. Billy's good. Billy's good, but but I mean, he there's a few balls that he hit there. Okay, we won't go into that. But it's been a pleasure working with everybody from Bob, Megan, Nick, Ross. All of you guys have been fantastic. So I just want to thank you for this opportunity. It's been an honor and a privilege, and thanks again.
Thank you, sir. Trustee Daly.
The Easter egg hunt is on April 4th at Wellington Middle High School at 11 a.m. So I hope everybody can make it. It is an actual kind of festival and event. There's going to be food trucks and activities. So plan to stay there for a little while in addition to hunting for eggs. On April 17th, Main Street's doing their town cleanup project. So if you are eager to volunteer, that is a great opportunity. April 20th is the next Mingle on Main. And then April 25th is Arbor Day celebration. It would be lovely for all of us to come out and celebrate that. So a lot of opportunities to start gathering. It's springtime. I love that time of year. People always come together. So if you have any other questions about what's going on or where to be, just let me know. Otherwise, look for our town newsletter, which will indicate the majority of these dates from the town perspective too. I do want to say thank you to Dave. And it's been a pleasure to get to know you. I am also not great at golf. I'm glad you didn't call that out, but I'll call myself out. But we had the opportunity to raise money for wonderful charities and play a lot of golf together. So thank you very much. And I'm happy I got to know you better through those opportunities. Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay. Well, Trustee Wiegand, to address your comment from earlier. I was hoping to present this at the March 10th meeting, but unfortunately I wasn't there. And I'm hoping this is also not premature, but I'm announcing it now because I don't know if I'm going to be here after the election. So if I am not, somebody else is going to have to pick up the torch. So, and in no small part, thanks to staff, Mr. Byrd, I've been sitting on the Upper Front Range Transportation Planning Region quarterly meetings and that sort of thing, and subject to approval by the Transportation Planning Commission. I'm happy to say project number 3384 is now on the draft 10-year plan for CDOT, which involves the I-25 Wellington preliminary interchange design and pedestrian crossing with an estimated budget of $65 million. So let's make sure that we get that funding secured, folks. And hopefully CDOT does get that approved for us, but somebody is going to have to pick up the torch in the event that I myself is not here. So there you go.
Thank you, sir. Good. I have nothing further to report other than this is the last official meeting, so it's been a pleasure working with all where I'm, making actings and things. So I appreciate each and every one of you and everything you've done, and really just care about you guys and staff. Thank you for everything you guys do, and I'll see you guys again. But yeah, that's all I've got. Having no further business, do I hear a motion to adjourn? All in favor? Aye. Now adjourn the regular meeting, time being 8:25 p.m.